We'll call the meeting to order, and I think a lot of y'all know we have a press conference today at 3 to go over our June 9th celebration, and so we'll break. I'll try to break around 2:45 and give us a few minutes to regroup and figure out our setup on that. I think we're going to have some city council members. We're going to have some members of the official grand opening committee, and so we'll go. Hopefully we're through with our meeting at that point and we don't have to re-adjourn. Okay, you got the minutes before you from our March meeting. Motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I did receive one written amendment from Mr. Merding. I have that and we'll note it and make those changes.
Motion for approval of minutes.
I just have one correction to paragraph 5. The second
Mr. Smith.
sentence, the word should be reaching. Chairman Merrill advised that the COR was reaching. The H is left out. Just a typo. So just make that one change.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Duly noted.
Still looking for a motion.
Oh.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Corrections, any further corrections or additions? All in favor say aye. As
Aye.
amended? No. Passes. No cards?
No cards, Mr.
Pierce?
Chairman.
Then I'm going to take this opportunity. We don't have anybody that wants to speak, but I'm going to speak. How many people sitting around this table have been to a ball game? Everyone has been to a ball game. Brian Spencer, please tell me you've been to a ball game.
Every game except
Mr. Merding hasn't. You need to go to a ball game. We've all been working for 6 years, along with a lot of other people, but 6 years to get that open, and it was very impressive. And we might hear from him later, but I'm going to ask again for the president of Pensacola Baseball, Bruce Baldwin, to stand up.
Right.
How about it? Great job. I couldn't have envisioned any better the first game, and it's been like that every other game since. Wouldn't you concur, Councilman Spencer?
even from a boat.
It's been great, and it just, you know, everybody should pat themselves on the back that worked so hard on this and getting it to where it is today. And again, thankfully that we moved in midstream when the independent league we had changed to a AA, and we changed the stadium, and we are where we are. And I see also in the back that comes to a lot of meetings. I just want to recognize him. I want to ask the gentleman who I was told in a speech yesterday that he was the oldest person that's ever thrown out the first pitch in the state of Florida. But Roger McDonald, who threw out the first pitch. Stand up, Roger. And it was a strike, I might add. Okay, action items. I see we have our plaque back for the final proof. Apparently, as y'all know, last time we approved it and talked about whether to include the city council or not include the city council, and we kind of threw that back towards the city council, and I've understood it's come back to us for another revision. Mr. Spears, you want to talk about that?
I would defer to Councilwoman Pratt, who led the discussion at City Council, but this does reflect their motion and vote last week.
I don't have much to say, really. I think it sort of says what it needs to say. They wanted to put the council on, and Tom Bonfield and Al Kobe, who were very, very involved in getting it done. So this was what the council approved, and so we sent it back for final CMPA approval.
Mr. Baker.
Well, I was gonna ask, I think it says that Fogg's term starts with 2001. Wasn't it before that, or is there a reason?
I think that's when it became a elected mayor and not an appointed mayor.
No, you want a motion on
Well,
this thing?
other question? Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Second.
I got a motion motion and a second for approval of what you have before you, which at this point, it's our final plaque. And Mr. Spears, I know we had Mr. Henderson in here at the meeting that when he needed time frame, can we still meet that time frame?
Tomorrow is the order date. We will order this plaque tomorrow.
And that will get us here in time for our June 9th.
Yes, sir. They needed 4 weeks. This is almost 7 weeks.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Carter?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, so we're not 2 plaques, we're only 1 plaque, and this is everything on it.
two plaques that are identical. This plaque will be replicated, one on the stadium, one on the amphitheater.
So,
Any plaque you see will have this on it.
but there's going to be,
Two of them. Two
okay,
of
so
the same
that's
thing.
important to note. Okay, and where are the locations again?
One somewhere at the main entrance to the stadium, right past the gates, and the other one somewhere on the amphitheater as soon as it gets constructed.
Thank you.
Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The only other thing I'd like to add is, since we've got the city managers in here, should we put the city administrator, Bill Reynolds, and I hate to confuse the issue anymore, but since those have been in there, would that be appropriate? Dr. Pratt?
That would be fine. I think, though, in the new form of government, the city manager sort of been replaced with the mayor as opposed to the administrator.
Fine,
If
thank you.
that, I don't know.
Just
Have no
notice that.
feelings on that.
Any other comments?
I would just
Ms. Smith?
recommend that for Vice Admiral John H. Fetterman, that we put USN, his service, because even though it's rare, you could see a Coast Guard Vice Admiral. I don't know if it's worthwhile, but normally that would be protocol to put USN with an R retired or whatever is appropriate.
Ms.
So-
Carter?
Yes, somebody mentioned that, and I don't know, so that we don't make a faux pas, and I wish we had a,
Well, right.
Didn't Mrs. Fetterman approve or not?
She approved the vice admiral and previously said Admiral John H. Fetterman, but I will confer once again with Mrs.
Be my suggestion,
Yeah.
follow whatever.
Bob's in the back with his hand up. And does he have proper protocol of this? If not, I'm deferring to Mr. Smith. Go ahead. No, I said if not. Go ahead, Bob. You have something on this issue?
There is a protocol for that. However, there are many, Mr. Smith is one of them, veterans who have earned a title. If we're going to get into that, and we're going to pick and choose what title we're going to give somebody on that plaque, I have a heartburn with that because I don't think we'll ever get it right.
All right. This is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to
Okay.
stop. I'm going to stop this and let Mr. Spears ask Ms. Fetterman if that's all right with the board, and let her get final say on her deceased husband's plaque. All right.
And Mr. Chairman, if there's any other corrections or changes or preferences to spelling, I believe I've conferred with each trustee on your particular name, but you got till afternoon tomorrow.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions? If not, all in favor of, as of now, the final plaque, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And as of tomorrow, it will be final because it's going to the bronze maker. Thank you. All right, we're going to move right into updates, and we're going to start with the construction owner's representative. Steve, are you handling that? We put you at the top. I know you're back there usually getting a nap at this point, but and Mike, I know you're in the audience there. If you want to come up, you going to let Steve handle it?
All right, well, obviously at this point, construction-wise, stadium, we're in the punch list development phase and moving through punch list. The COR is working on developing the punch list, and we'll work with Ed on that. Obviously, we're working through the landscaping, getting it grown in, rooted in, and touched up from the large push right before opening game, touching up irrigation, things like that. Big thing, obviously, is the amphitheater. We feel like they're in good shape on the schedule there. Next week, we'll start landscaping and irrigating the lawn portion of the amphitheater. They've begun cleaning up and doing some preliminary grading for the road that goes down the east bulkhead to it. Obviously, you see the painting going on the steel. The top roof deck should be going on soon, so it's moving along well, and we feel good about their schedule on it. So, other than that, any questions?
Ms. Carter.
you know what I'm looking for? We're almost
We've
done.
had the success. Mr. Horton's worked hard for you to get more of the responses in on his letters, and I believe we've got maybe 10 or so more to receive back. So that's been going well the past month, and when we get those last 10 or hear finally from them, we'll get them to you and expect to do it by the end of this month.
And I really appreciate that because we didn't know in the EBO meeting where we were with that. If you could get them to me by the end of the month, because we want to have
Mm-hmm.
the printing and everything done, we'll take what we have.
That's our plan.
Mr. Reeves?
We just issued a check to Hatchmount McDonald for $25,536.48. And it was represented to me that that was their last check, that they were going gratis after that. Is that true?
I don't know what time period that check represents, but through the end of March is what the CORs, or Hatchmont's getting paid for. And then I think Mike and Charles, he can speak for that, but
Yeah, the last invoice that closes everything out.
Could you speak to the mic, Mr. Broussard?
So what happens as far as the back of the house and that sort of thing is?
We're going to continue on. We issued a letter to the chairman and Mr. Spears to continue. And I apologize for not having a monthly report here today because we should have had that. We're going to continue with weekly inspections. Our inspector goes out once a week and attends the construction meetings. And both Charles Baxley, myself, and Steve Dana will continue to make periodic inspections and represent the court at the meetings until the end of the construction, which is right now anticipated to be, I think, May 28th or so.
So, I mean, so if this was through March 31st, it was the last check?
The last, yes, correct. That's it. Over with. And we stayed, and I will stay, we stayed, we actually, I thought we did more than our published scope of work, and we stayed within budget. That completes our budget.
That's no criticism. I just, you know, when you're to the bottom of your bank account.
And thank you. Yeah, no, it's over with.
And
Yeah,
Mr. Reeves, for full disclosure, you were not at our last meeting, and I think it's because of a death in the family. And I disclosed that I'd met with Mike Broussard and Charles Baxley came to my office, and we knew the budget was coming to an end. I was trying to figure out what we're doing, and they said we will continue on through the end. And I applauded them publicly last month for doing that, and we appreciate it again for continuing on the services. Nobody anticipated that we would make the changes. We talked about the changes we had to make to the ball team because thankfully we got to do that. The stadium, because we went from an independent to a AA, and the same with the amphitheater. We've increased the capacity of that, and it's extended our construction time, but they've agreed to do that. Anything further on that?
No, I mean, as long as, there's another check here that I signed that, you know, as long as we're not just.
We're not continuing
from
on.
the general contractor to the.
When they're whatever dollars we had left in that budget, they were going to get after that. They've agreed to continue on on their dime. And like I said, once again, the principal, Mr. Baxley and Mike both. Yes, sir, Mike.
I stand corrected. I'm just told that's not our last check. Check would have been through February services. So they run a little late. The checks actually run later than the invoice.
They'll tell me anything to get me to sign a check.
So there is a delay between, so that check is for February work. So we still have March work, which I think is I think it's on the 18,000 or so.
Okay, we'll take it to the bank quick.
After their March payment, they're through. Councilman Spencer, did you have
Appreciate
something? Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks. Before Mr. Steve Dana escapes back into the blur of the audience, I want him to be the man in focus, the individual in focus right now, and recognize him for his extraordinary efforts as we approach game day. Mr. Dana was out there in the early morning hours and late into the evening, tromping around and very much on a hands-on mode, helping the vendors, basically the landscape crew. He just really went above and beyond, and I know that he can't stand this sort of moment of being in the spotlight, but I would be remiss if I didn't share my appreciation, and I hope on behalf of the entire CMPA Board, thank you for an extraordinary effort and an accomplishment that has resulted in showcasing downtown Pensacola in a way that was unimaginable I think if Mr. Dana had not fallen into our lap. So thank you, Mr. Dana, very much.
Thank you.
I too will echo that, along with your partner, Jerry Pate. We appreciate everything you've done. I was told the other day, timely as well, because of the rain yesterday, that field has been designed, thanks to y'all's help, to drain where a normal field would drain 2 inches an hour. I think we can drain 5. Is that correct?
Well, initially, it was designed for 1 inch an hour, and now it's over 5.
5 inches an
Yeah.
hour. Well, that's that y'all came in and said you probably need to redo that, and we probably would have seen that come into play yesterday, I presume. So thank you for that. Well, anything else for Steve? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go into design build team. Mr. Horton.
Good afternoon. Steve covered most of what's going on across the street, but big focus right now is on the amphitheater. We've poured the back of house slab, so we should start block work on the back next week and brickwork on the front. Our cast stone columns will be starting to be delivered tomorrow, and we will be dried in with the main stage roof. So things are tracking pretty well. As he talked about, should start on our road, working from the corner of Cedar and Spring, working towards the amphitheater. We should be started on that Monday as well. We're getting the last few storm structures in and tied in, so should start finishing that, and then we're going to finish as he talked about, the south end, working on the landscape and irrigation. So things are progressing well. We're working off punch list items on the stadium and the rest of the site, and so things are going pretty well. Any questions?
Councilman Spencer.
Mr. Horton, thank you very much for galvanizing your crew as well, not only throughout the project, but that crucial final 11th hour. Everyone pitched in and seemed to be part of basically a Let's Show Off Pensacola team, and I know you were part of it, so thank you. I would like to give Mr. Horton a round of applause before I ask him the next question. Mr. Horton, any update on the pond liner?
Mr. Hemphill and I were just talking about it, and we're looking at several different options, and I think we'll probably try and come to a resolution on that within the next 2 or 3 days, and then go ahead and get it implemented.
And the implementation will result, for everyone's knowledge, when they correct that, as I understand, then the fountains, the 2 water features that we have told the public will be in the project, will be installed. But right now,
correct,
the pond liner issue is preventing the installation of the fountains. All right. Fountains will be greeting you as you enter the park.
Yep, they're on site. I want to take a minute. Mr. Baker had asked me maybe just to kind of give you guys a payment, the process of payments. I know there's been a lot of complaints about slow pay, and it's easy to say we're paying people slow, but I think it would be a little easier if you guys all understood the process and what we're having to go through. We have, and one thing on this job that's different is most times your billing cycle is for a month and your bill is turned in at the end of the month. We're not turning our bills in to you guys until the 10th. So we're already 10 days later in a typical process. Usually payments are turned in on the 1st of the month. When we're doing it on the 10th, and that was because of an issue with the required backup when we started the job that we had to provide to the CMPA. So anyway, we're starting with a 10-day lapse there. But also on this job, we have material owner direct payments that complicate the process. We also, in the state of Florida, if you file an NTO, meaning that a material vendor has notified you guys as the owner that they're providing materials, we have to get NTO lien releases. Those are not required in many states in which we do business. It's a thing in Florida. So also, we have subcontractors that are being paid as a joint check subcontractor, and we have some subcontractors who are being paid as a typical sub, not joint check. Those processes require different lien releases. Joint check paperwork requires a lien release for the previous pay period, saying that you've been paid. So until those payments are made, they can't provide the needed lien release. So there's all this paperwork has to be gathered before we will approve a pay app to be paid. And frankly, the subs are not very good at getting their paperwork in. So in most cases, when they're not being paid, it's because we're waiting on a piece of paper from them. Now, there has been an instance when we've had the paperwork in place and we had an internal issue where we were delayed 3 or 4 or 5 days. But trust me, we want to pay these guys as soon as we possibly can and as fast as we can. Now, let me take it a step further. You know, a lot of these complaints have been coming from second and third tier subcontractors. We have a subcontract with a prime subcontractor and we pay him. We don't have privy to when he's paying his second and third tier subcontractors. They have an agreement in which they've signed, so that's a separate agreement from Magi, and Magi is not involved in that agreement at all. So, you know, second and third tier complaints, not a whole lot I can do about, other than if somebody calls me, I can get to the bottom of why somebody's not getting paid. So, I mean, it's a very complicated process. You know, there's also been people complaining about not getting paid retainage. Our contract with the CMPA clearly defines when retainages can be released and what percentages can be released. And until I meet those requirements, I can't bill for retainage, and retainage is not going to be paid out until I've been paid for it. I'm not going to finance those guys' work. And again, second and third tier sub, they have a whole separate agreement with their contractor. So, and I'm not a part of that agreement. So, you know, if they cut a deal that they're going to get paid retainage in 2 days after they finish the work, then that's their deal, not my deal. So I don't know if that helps. It's an extremely complicated process, and you know, this job is complicated at a couple of steps further because of the owner direct issue that's involved, because those lien releases are required as well. So it's been a challenge.
Mike, approximately how many subcontractors do you have across the street?
Well, I know from the letters that I sent out from Ms. Carter, I sent out in excess of 40, so I would say between 40 and 45 separate subcontractors that I have an agreement with.
Mr. Baker, did you have something?
Well, I guess if Audrey has some questions, like we had.
Ms. Carter.
This earlier, so.
Thank
Ms.
you, Chair. Mike, first I want to say I've learned a lot about how you came in and you saved us. And you saved us a lot of money, and I thank you for that. And nobody's more thankful than this board. But what I recognize is while you came in, there was a lot of history prior to you coming in that, quite frankly, you just weren't privy to. And that is the history of this whole matter of the covenant with the community, and why was it so important that we have it, and why is it so important that we this board put such an emphasis on it. So I apologize for you not getting that history and understanding why I keep, some people might say beating a dead horse or wagging the dog behind the tail or whatever that is. The reason is because this community has grown because of this project. And it wasn't fair of us not to tell you up advance that we really needed you to work on payment because these subs could not make it. We knew that going into it, which is why the covenant was created. It was an additional layer that the master developer agreed upon, just like he had committed to do the 33 1/3%. So it has never been personal unto her or unto you. It has simply been whatever it is, we need to be transparent. And I want to say that up front. So whatever I'm going to say has to do with how to resolve it, which is why I sent the information directly to you. I didn't send it to anyone else because I know that you are first tier prime and you have total responsibility for getting this done. That being said, there had to be someone that you worked with to resolve the issues with these minorities, these 13 minorities, which we paid someone to do that so that you wouldn't have to worry about that, so we get the numbers that we wanted. And it didn't happen, so consequently you become the responsible person for that, just like the numbers that we need now to prove out that we did what we said we were going to do it. So what I'm saying is if we don't do that, because we made promises, if we don't make an effort to give them something, what we've said to them is that the covenant never mattered in the first place. And that is why I've asked you to help me. And I'm just the messenger, and I'm just the person to tie up the loose ends. So we have to take issue with the payment. If there's anything you can do to help resolve it, or let this board know how you can resolve it for these 13 subs, because many of them are having to go out of business and take jobs because they just couldn't, and they were promised something totally different, honest to God, that we were going to make allowances. And you came in just doing business as usual and doing a fine job. There's no way you could have known. But the problem there exists that they're almost out of business. Many of them are going out of business because of this project, and I'm trying to save it any way we can by giving them the dollars that they can to take them over to the next project. We're helping them get other business. We're doing workshops with Baptists and other people, and that money is what's going to tide them over. So that's why it was such an issue and why I gave you the information regarding the Prompt Pay Act. Because all they know is that the board was responsible for the cover, and the board gave a full commitment to it, and they're the only person that we can go to get any actual item because they wasn't getting any from anyone else. Do you understand that?
I do, but again, I'm limited in what I can do legally. I mean, if a second and third tier subcontractor has an agreement with a sub of mine, that's their business. I can't do anything. I'm not involved in that agreement.
But do you see the dilemma there?
I
because
understand.
If you're you just said to us that you're 45 days, you're 10 days when you get start down, and then another 30 days. Do you see that was an inherent problem that we've been trying to fix ever since we got this project that you inherited that was still an issue for these minority subs? And I know that I can't go back and change that, and I'm not trying to. What I'm saying is right now as we complete, is there anything we can do, work together, to get those who don't have a problem with their liens, no problems, can they get paid? It's only 13 of them.
We're paying them as fast as we get the paperwork. I promise you. And I mean, and I'll be honest with you, the only person that I personally have ever heard from about payment is Pat Brown. I have not gotten a phone call from any other contractors on that list. The other one was Huey's Works about the retainage, and he claimed it took him a year. Well, he didn't tell you the rest of the story, that he had a lien filed against him because he hadn't paid his sub in Orlando. So we went through a year's worth of discussions to get that taken care of before I could pay him. So that's why he didn't get paid, because he hadn't paid his sub. So, you know, they're not fully disclosing all the truth in their complaints they're making to you. That's one thing.
And I'll finish up with saying this, which is why I'm so happy that I talked to you directly. And I understand the chain of command. And out of respect, I realized there had to be something, something wrong. I know that there are two sides to a story, But can you understand the position of this board having not really, we really didn't do well on what we promised on the covenant. I'm just trying to finish up as best as we can, tie up these loose ends to the best of our ability, and not have a year or 60 days. Now, if you say to me the 13 subs, Huey's Works, that's what happened to them, I'm fine. Like the issues that I gave you, just deal with them. We have documentation to say the reason why you didn't get what you get is because you didn't do your part. Right now, I'm only getting one side.
Well, and again, I can only speak to the people that Magi has an agreement with. Like, I had a contract with Huey's Works direct, and that was the issue. He's working for Phoenix Coatings. I think he's working for, which I have no idea what their agreements are. I don't. That's not my business. I subcontracted the painting work to Phoenix Coatings, and if Phoenix made a deal with Huey's Works, I'm not privy to that deal.
So where did these contracts go when those contracts went south, when we're second in tier? Because that was an issue in some cases with the information I sent to you. What do you do? Who do they go to?
They have an agreement, particular, let's just take affordable concrete, okay? He has a contract with Morley. I have a contract with Morley. Okay, my agreement is with Morley to put that site concrete in. He's turned around and has an agreement with Affordable Concrete. I have no idea what their agreement is. I don't know if Morley said, I'll pay you every Friday. I don't know if he said, I'll pay you once a month. I have no idea. That's their business. I'm going to pay Morley for the work he installs per our contract. And whatever happens over there with Affordable, that's their business. So but yet I've never heard a phone call from Affordable. You know, I've never gotten a phone call from anybody on the list other than Pat Brown.
And Chair, I just want...
And let me say one other thing. And you weren't involved early on in the project, but we were, and George can speak to this, we had plans to approach minority participation in a little bit more of an aggressive standpoint. We had talked about some scopes of work that we were going to specifically set aside for minority participation. That's right. And we were not allowed by the board or their legal counsel. So we tried to do things that we weren't allowed to do. And you can take that up with Ed Fleming, but we were told we couldn't do that. That was illegal. So we had some plans and some things in mind to do better than we did. But when we were given the new rules, so to speak, our hands were tied a little bit with what we could do.
Chair, and this is the final. This conversation that we're having should have happened 4 months ago, because he helped to clear me up about why there were so many people not knowing who to go to when they weren't getting paid, and they were having a lot of issues, and they were running around trying to find out how to get payment issues or issues with their subs. And I was enlightened today, and I knew it had something, the other side of it had to go on, but I never had the opportunity to speak to you face to face about these issues. They have been going on for quite a while, and I think that this is a part of a learning curve for us on this project that we can use to help in the future. And these are the kind of things we can put, empirical evidence that it's a problem that we need to deal today with pay. Because he just said there was 3 layers of pay. You got him and his subs, which he's got a 45-day. The second gets the money, and then they have their own pay, how they're going to pay. And then the third, if there's a sub behind that, decides how they're going to can pay. It could be 90 days easily. And the way these minority subs took it for the EBO is that they were going to get paid in 35, 45 days. And that's what they've been crying the whole time. It was never going to happen. I'm just sharing to you, this is the first time I've been able to get closure as working with the EBO chair and dealing with this problem.
I wish you'd gotten that explained to you earlier. I mean, that's part of it, just part of construction, Mr. Baker.
Well, I just want to say, in fairness to Ed Spears, he has tried to explain that to us at every single meeting we've had for quite a while, and he's done a fairly good job at it, but it's better to hear it from Mr. Horton, I think.
Mr. Reeves.
Have you paid your joint venture partner yet?
He has been paid some funds. And I believe that Doug Eckert and Mr. Fleming have been speaking, and we're due to pay them some more money shortly. I mean, we have nothing legally saying not to pay them. And I actually had a meeting with Doug in the last Wednesday, and he was going to basically notify the CMPA that he was fixing to make a disbursement, give them an opportunity to file whatever they need to file legally to stop it.
A final disbursement?
No, not a final disbursement. Rough numbers, at the end of the job, they would be due somewhere in the $625,000 range, and I think to date, we have paid out $100,000 is all.
Mr. Reeves, you want to tell him what you're asking for?
Pardon me?
You want to explain? Does everybody know why he's asking?
Well, he said he, but I'm assuming you're talking about the developer.
Yeah, and PDP. Yeah.
Right. So what he's saying is they've got another $525,000 due them. Why are you shaking your head?
It's 600 on top of the 100.
No.
No?
He's right. Yeah.
Got another $525,000. And, you know, we could have a court ruling rather quickly.
That's
Not that I would ask for it.
not that you what?
Not that I would ask for it.
Well,
Needs to be a non-lawyer.
does everybody know what he's talking about? Is we know, we as I've reported to this board several times, we had a summary judgment hearing, I don't know how many weeks ago now, asking for the court to rule, because we do have some claims against MPDP, and we're certainly afraid if the money's dispersed, that we won't see it again. And so, I just want to explain what Mr. Reeves is talking about, and we're hoping, and there's, it's in the judge's hands, and we hope that's, that we, and I appreciate what Mr. Horton's saying, and we, the job is not finished yet. The amphitheater is supposed to be finished, as we heard, at the end of May, and we're hoping that we hear something favorably by then, obviously. Ms. Carter?
So part of that judgment that we have against him is for unmet obligations.
No, we don't have a judgment.
I mean,
We don't have a judgment. Just the tangible, remember the developer, when we really got down to it, found out that the developer had a negative net worth, didn't have any money, broke, okay? And then they have an entitlement to a percentage, let's say 3% or 2% or 1% of the construction contract. So what I was asking him was whether or not their joint venture partner had been paid. And what he said is they paid him $100,000 and there's another $525,000 that's going to be due the developer that we released. We have a claim against that and more, probably, at least in our mind's eye. So once that's gone, the chances that you're going to collect a judgment become very slim. It would be, in the words of our great lawyer, justice denied because the money's gone.
So is there anything, because it was the master developer, MPDP, who said that they were going to put forth and do the 33 and a third. I mean, in their presentation, I was there because I was there in the beginning. And he obviously did not do a lot of things that was promised. And he promised, he obligated contractually to do it. Are we in the process of getting dollars back for that, or can that be part of what we alleged, or is it already part of it, and that's part of the $400 and some thousand that, or whatever the amount is?
These undispersed funds are the only funds that
We can
remain in the
attach.
project that we can seize if awarded by the court.
Mr. Barney.
As I understood you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said is it your company sees no legal impairment at this point to payment?
We,
His lawyer.
as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer.
Good for you.
We have not received any kind of notice to not pay those funds other than a phone call and I guess, please don't pay them. And, you know, that's,
So as it stands right now, it's between our lawyer and Hora's lawyers?
Correct.
And until your lawyer blesses it, that you're not going to be making any payments?
Well, myself, our attorney, and the CEO of our company were in a meeting, and when this came up, we discussed it, and the opinion is it's time to disperse some more funds from, let's say this, if this were a normal situation, and we had a joint venture partner that was, you know, standing right there with us, and I would say this to you, the way we would decide it's time to disperse funds is how far along is the project as far as completion, what are the remaining risks financially on the project, and we're far enough along that, you know, if you think we've paid 100 out of 625 from a percentage basis, that's far less than the percent complete of the project. So it's time to disperse funds. And our attorney's opinion is that we have not received any kind of legal notice to not pay those funds.
And what kind of round numbers are you thinking
I
that
think we talked about paying between 50 and 75,000, and probably not paying off any more for, you know, 30 or 60 more days until we get the project.
And is there
complete.
anything needed from them before you make any payment? Lien releases, satisfactions?
No, sir. But because Doug Eckert is our attorney and Mr. Fleming had spoken on this, Doug felt like he owed Mr. Fleming a call or an email to notify him that within the next 14 days we were going to make a disbursement in case they wanted to, whatever legal had to be done to stop.
And that was 14 days from last Wednesday?
Yeah. We met on Wednesday, and we had a company meeting on Thursday and Friday, so my guess is he may not even have talked to Mr. Fleming or sent him an email till this past Monday.
Mr. Reeves?
Technically speaking, as much as we would like to think that the end of the project is in May, from their perspective, there's your joint venture partner, the back of the house really wasn't originally part of that.
Well, I mean, anything that's included in our current contract is 50% of their deal. Because it's all contracted with Magi.
And as our two attorneys here, we put y'all together over there. And I have asked Mr. Fleming, and maybe I'll re-ask him, or one of y'all are welcome to. I don't know if we can do an injunction at this part. And if you know that, tell me. But I think this summary judgment is what we needed to do, and hopefully there was a...
Well, that would clearly resolve it, but, you know, I'm wondering, I talked to Ed about some, you know, using some emergency procedures in federal court, and that's what he did. But now it's in the bosom of the court, no pun intended, and so, you know, the only other thing would be, you know, they tried a sequestration and it failed, you know. You might mention that term or something similar to him. I don't know that we need to get in the middle of it. You know,
But you said it's on the
more his field than mine.
You said it's on the mercy of the court at this point? Is that what you said?
No,
You have to be fairly creative to stop this
Yeah.
right now,
About
because
whether an injunction or whether sequestration or something of that nature, I'm sure, you know, he's thought of some of those things, but, you know, I think one thing about it, if you did something like that, if he did something like that on our behalf, It would certainly
slow
put
up
the-
the works.
Well, I'm not sure. On an emergency basis, it would show the court what the risk is, that a delayed ruling could have tremendously adverse effects on the project in this, and it may somehow, in my experience, I agree with Mr. Reeves, you don't ever want to ask a judge to rule. Because they'll rule, but you won't like it. Be careful what you ask
Especially
for.
if you're a lawyer.
But if if he filed some sort of emergency pleading like that, I'm just suggesting that you might discuss that with him. I don't want to, run up our bill anymore by having multiple people discuss it with him.
I will, and I've asked him if there's anything else we can do, and as you two gentlemen know,
We know your feelings.
is better than anybody. I mean, it's a tough issue of he said he thinks he's done everything he can on that
Well,
issue.
but I don't know that if he hasn't gotten the email or from Horare's attorneys that they're going to disperse in 14 days,
Right.
that may be new information, and it may be something that, and the good news is that it's, it's not 500,000, it may be 50 or 75.
And that
I'd like
is-
some sort of confirmation that it's not above that,
Yeah.
if we can get that to Mr. Spears.
And I'll say, and hopefully we get that. I mean, there's tough decisions this board made to make some budget cuts to get this park open. We still had to make some cuts, and there's as you
Borrow some
notice
money.
that park in Bartolome, that park looks great. It's certainly missing a children's area and a playground area and things we could have done that we could have used over $300,000 that we paid out, and I'll say, my opinion, a very frivolous lawsuit. We had to do it, we had to pay it. But again, that's one of the things I think is wrong with the legal system. That's $300,000 we paid to get into this, and we had to. And hopefully some of that money will offset some of that, and we can put some more things in this park. But I will mention that to him again, but I appreciate Mr. Horton doing what he can to slow that. I know they have, because you're right, on percentage basis, I'm sure they're beating your
But
doors
if you
down.
had a third-party convener of some sort, not us or not, that might slow the process down, if a taxpayer was concerned
Or a whistleblower.
right.
I've got a stack of cards, but Dottie, do you want to speak on this subject?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody else, I got two cards before you, anybody else want to speak on this subject? Eleanor, do you want to speak on this subject? Okay, anything else from the board on this? All right,
I'm Dottie Dubuisson, local citizen. I also want to thank Mr. Hoare Hoare Construction, for the extra effort that they've made in honoring the spirit of what this whole project was about, and in giving him some support in dragging his feet as much as we're asking him to drag. I respectfully request that the board pass a formal request to him that he honor the spirit of the contract under which he has been retained as a part of the venture partnership. I heard him say he had gotten a phone call, but I don't believe he has any legal documentation that you officially have asked him to hold off in the spirit of following through. So as much as I hear what you're saying, that you think he's doing everything he can, and I hear him saying he's doing, what he did not say is that he had a written resolution from you folks asking him to support you through any means possible, which I believe you could do. And I also believe that citizens could additionally file. He could hold off payment until such time as his venture partner came after him with a lien. So there's a lot of opportunities that we do have for giving him some support in not bending to this short-term window. So I would just encourage you to look at whether maybe a formal resolution from this board in support of his efforts to honor the spirit of the project and what was broken could be mended. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Dubuisson. Mr. Murdy?
I appreciate your thoughts, but as an attorney, I'm concerned, they've done above and beyond, but I would expect there's an attorney fee provision in the contract that he has with his joint venture partner. Never seen it, don't know. And I don't think that their legal counsel would let them do something that would expose them to legal risk or, legal expense. The other thing from this board, I think there is an action what's called intentional interference with a contractual relationship, and I would be hesitant to suggest this board take any formal action without, the blessing of our counsel. I think, our counsel, there's certain things he can do, but I think
Sure.
we ought not to be taking any formal action without, the blessing of the council.
Right, and I guess I wasn't trying to suggest that you tell him how to do it, but that just you give him the support and appreciation and a resolution from the board for all that he is doing to honor the spirit. I don't believe that's directing him to do anything against the contract,
Okay.
because...
Well, I just should do everything's power to delay payment. I think that's when we get into a risk.
We appreciate that. And I don't think a resolution from this board would slow down. If they've got to pay, they're going to pay. That's not the legal document he's looking for. He's looking for something from the court telling him, such as an injunction, that he doesn't have to pay. Ms. Johnson, did you want to speak on this subject? Eleanor?
Okay, and while she's coming up,
Please.
has the bonding company released you?
Our bond's still in place.
I would think that you wouldn't have to pay totally till you were released, your bonding company release you at the end of the job. Just an idea for you to give your lawyer.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to find out if it's legal or not, that if a subcontractor is not paying the second and third tier, does the prime have a responsibility to pay his vendors or his second or third tier people?
I don't believe that a second or third tier sub has lien rights. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, because I did hear you say that you've paid the subcontractors, and it's not you guys' responsibility if they don't pay their vendors and their other.
Let me clarify. Some subcontractors, and I can't give you a list, are being paid joint check, whereas instead of, let's just say if I had a contract with Bill's Plumbing, okay? Normal procedures, you pay Bill's Plumbing everything he's due for the month. Some subs on this job are joint checked, whereas Bill's Plumbing gets a part of a payment, and if he turned around and subbed some of his plumbing to a second tier, then there's a check cut to Bill's Plumbing and the second tier sub to assure that second tier subcontractor gets paid.
Because I thought there was a law in place that if a subcontractor does not pay his people, that the prime takes care of.
The only thing that if the second or third tier subcontractor has lien rights, and I'm not sure if they do or don't.
Okay, and the other one is, this is spilled milk, but in doing a little research, there are some programs where contractors, banks, and private developers have come up with creative ways to include minorities who have been left behind historically, who don't measure up to the laws of a established prime company. And I heard you say that you all had some things in place before we adopted this new EBO plan that you all could have implemented that would have been a little more aggressive than what we've already have in place.
Right.
And I think that when we do business, we need to take a look at that. It goes back again to us not doing our homework. Because if your company has more experience at including minorities and it's viable, then we need to be looking at ways to include minorities where they don't go out of business, so they don't fall always at the short end. Because when we take a look at everything, the minorities are always at the tail end of what we're supposed to be our due diligence of including minorities. And that's not including minorities if a minority participates and they don't come out ahead. I mean, who goes in business to not come out ahead?
Nobody.
So I just wanted to say that you mentioned that you guys had in the past done some aggressive programs that have been favorable, and we need to take a look at that when we continue with the back of the house even.
Well, I think, you know, in this project, you know, is it a publicly funded project or is it not? That's one question, because, you know, we were told, for instance, if let's just say we took 2 bids on painting, and one contractor was a majority contractor and the other contractor was a minority contractor. If the minority contractor was $1 more expensive, we were told we couldn't use him because their legal counsel said this was, you know, you had to follow the public bid laws. So, you know, we also wanted to take some scopes of work and only have minority contractors bid on that. We were told we couldn't do that. So, you know, there were some things that we had to work within, and I feel like we did a pretty decent job working within them and getting some valid participation. And I think, you know, that there are probably some minority subcontractors that have been involved in the job that would tell you that they've learned a lot. And you know, learning is not always good. Sometimes you learn things to make you better the next time. Correct. So, you know.
And also, our EBO covenant and our issues that we're having with those 13 minorities, we've spent tax dollars on having people to work with those subcontractors and to find out about all these issues of why they're not getting paid. And we didn't come up with any of that until now, and the project is finished. So I'm very disappointed in that, because that's a lot of money that's been spent for a committee or for staff to follow up with these people, and we still don't have any answers. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson. Mr. Murdy.
In response to the lady's comments, in part, your company did have a bonding program, did it not, that assisted subs and smaller companies that did not have the experience or the financial capability in order to obtain a bond that allowed smaller companies, whether they were minority or not, to qualify for work that they would otherwise not have qualified for.
That's correct.
And it's a requirement, ma'am, you're probably aware of it, but a public project must be bonded, and that's one of the things from the very inception we talked about that the gentleman that spoke for Movement for Change. I told him the time you need to do is before we start construction. Mr. O'Sullivan made his accounting firm available to say that, you know, you need financial records, you need financial capability, and there were some seminars put on well in advance of going to contract, like 2 years, to give small businesses as well as minorities the opportunity to gain the strengths and the experience and the financial record keeping that they needed. And they, even though they came in under very difficult circumstances in mid-course, they had a program. And I've had the conversation with Mr. Fleming. Being a public project, you use the term set aside, that is an absolute no-no. You cannot do it in a public project. You cannot take a higher bid. You know, if you have a lower responsible bid, you can take, you know, some discretion in certain areas. But, you know, there are good things about public contracting to protect the public taxpayers, but there's also some hurdles that make it very difficult to do what, you know, this board wanted to do and what the public charged us with doing.
Well, we have a gentleman in town who owns owns a bonding company. He came to city council meeting and he proposed a creative program where the city could have helped with the bonding, so that some of the contractors could use some of their cash, their liquid cash, to take care of some other obligations, and where they would pay for that bonding later on after they've earned some income. And he also brought up a few other creative programs that other cities have used that he's been in touch with. And I don't know if anyone ever got his name and number, but we did get his card. And he had some very good ideas that he has implemented from other cities. So maybe we need to take a look at talking to him for further contracting.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Pat Brown, I have your card. Do you want to address the subject? Thank you.
Good afternoon to the board. I just want to say briefly, the experience working on the project is very rewarding, and overall experience has been very positive. And I just wanted to just make sure the board understands I never had a lack of understanding of the payment process. My intent was to make the board aware of the intervals in between us getting paid. That was the primary interest. If I'm not mistaken, this went under referendum from the very beginning that the citizens voted to implement this project. And a lot of companies limped into that project financially. But at the end of the day, if some of those same companies go under, then I'm saying in the spirit of the covenant and the way it was presented and touted around town as there'll be quick pay provisions. There were a lot of things that came out of that initial, I'm saying going out and seeking companies that would come and participate. So that was my only comment. It's been very positive. I want to say that for the record because it was a positive process. And with regard to being a second tier sub this time around, it's much different. When I was a first tier sub, I could talk directly to HOR, Magi, and get issues addressed. But when you're second tier sub, you still take direction from HOR and Magi. They don't go directly to the first tier sub and then that sub comes to you. They can, but when it comes to pay, that link is not there. But again, for the record, it's very positive, and I'm glad to have been a part of it.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Horton, I appreciate it. I also want to thank you for leaving Ricky, the superintendent, here for another month or so. I sat next to him for a few minutes of the opening game, and he had his family down with him, and you talking about a proud guy. And I don't think his family understood the importance of it all, but it went well, and everything turned on, everything flushed, so I appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
And you finished when you said you would, didn't you?
Administration, Ed Spears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first part of the administrative report, I would call on Mr. David Flaherty and Kim Carmody to update you on the activities of the city under the management contract.
Thank you, Mr. Spears, Chairman, board members. We're here today just to give you a quick update on what's been going on across the street. As you know, you have a contract with the city to manage 3 significant areas: parking, vendors, and then special events at this point outside of the stadium. And obviously the parking has come into play initially. We're very pleased with what we've been able to accomplish. We've put 26 young people to work, working with our department. Great group of people, and we think the parking's going very well. It certainly is not, the lots that we're managing are certainly not filling up, and what we're finding around the community is that there's plenty of parking for people who are looking to get to the game, both on-street parking and in the various lots around town. And we're pretty happy about that. People are getting to the game in fairly short order and getting out of the game. I actually was, one night, we stayed to the last out. We left with the complete crowd. I was in my car at City Hall in about 5 minutes, and I was on 9th Avenue heading north in about 4 or 5 other minutes. And just easy in, easy out. So it's going very, very well. And compliments to the police department, as well as the young men and women we've hired. So we are planning, moving ahead with plans for activities in the park. I'm going to let Kim update you on that a little bit. Kim spoke a few minutes ago or earlier at noon about our vending program and where we're at with that. I just want to say that because we're not in place at this point, there's not an ordinance in place that allows us to have continuous vendors in the park. Kim actually came up with the idea, if you're doing a special event in the park, we can have vendors. They are part of the special event. And so, we're going to be moving forward with talking with vendors in this community and getting them on board. And in fact, there's 5 or 6 events that we're planning now, and we're looking for vendors to be a part of those events. So with that, let me have Kim just kind of update you on some of the activities that we're seeing in the near future.
We have a full summer this year, so I'm very excited. We are going to do a Wednesday night series. It's called Music at the Maritime. We actually already have a sponsor for most of those nights, and we'll be actually contracting with local bands to come out and play. We'll have inflatables, things of that nature for families. On Fridays, they're once a month, we'll have movies at the Maritime. There's a theme going on here. It's music at the Maritime, movies at the Maritime. You'll see there's a trend. We actually have a sponsor for half of that, and we are in the negotiation stage for a sponsor for the remaining balance that we're going to need to actually rent that project. And then we're also having, which I'm very excited about, it's called Motown at the Maritime. We are working with a local promoter to put on a music concert, not necessarily a series this year, but a one-time concert in the summer that will highlight some artists or some music from the Motown era and stage. We're very excited working with them. And then we also have our monthly music series called Blast from the Past. We'll start with the 80s, 70s, 60s, and 50s and work our way down. We will have music, vendors, and a car show at each of these events. And we already have signed Cat Country on as our media sponsor for that one. So those are just a few events that we have, and that takes us all the way just to September. So now I'm in negotiations with sponsors and promoters for a long-term series that they would come aboard and help us with some of those funding issues. But those are the ones that we're currently working on.
Finally, I just want to mention working with the Wahoos has been just great. They're great to work with. Bruce and myself talk very rarely anymore because things are going so smoothly, and when I see him at the stadium, I say hi. He's extremely busy, but just very cooperative, and Kim's had some dealings with them. They're bending over backwards to find some storage space for us, which we will be using in the future for events, carts in the park and those kinds of things. So just want to thank the Wahoos for their cooperation, and we're working very, very well together in terms of moving forward with the park. So with that, we certainly entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want, when you talk about music and going back in the music, I think you stopped at the 60s. I think that you need to also think about the older generation. I'm not looking at you right now, Mr. Reeves, by the way, but the people that even go farther beyond that, back in the 50s, in the 40s even. But again, I'm not looking at you, Mr. Reeves, for those type people. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we do the 50s, and that'll be in September, and then we're also going to do, in November, we're working on doing a kind of a concert under the stars. It'll be a catered series, tablecloths, the whole 9 yards, and that'll be more of the 20s and 30s era as well.
And these events are not costing us money?
That is my goal. Some of them are ticketed events, very minor.
We want y'all to make us money, not spend money.
That's what I'm working on.
And I appreciate the events, and we've talked about this privately as well, that you're doing, but, some of that'll come. I don't want to, and you've got a lot of them coming. But, and we're showing off what the park can do and hopefully get some revenue in the future, but I'd hate to spend a lot of money because we've got a tight budget at this point. Mr. Murdy?
I was just going to ask, could you tell me a little bit, tell us about the outreach to the potential vendors and your actual vendors that you mentioned you've already had contact? Because I think that's really key for this community to give people an opportunity to make some money. And if there's vendors down there, that will draw people. And if they go down there and there are no vendors, I think that's a missed opportunity. I know you can't force people to come down there, and you can't force vendors, but I just think it's important to have an outreach program, and I'd just like to know what you're.
Well, right now, like for our our grand opening, we've already signed up like 30 vendors. Right. We are doing outreach in different local newspapers, word of mouth, churches. Other events that are around town and in other areas, we've outreached to them to let them know we have this available. These events are designed around vendors there's different areas for the vendors, and on the sheet that they'll sign up with, they'll actually have a list that I need 2 popcorn vendors, I need 4 snow cone vendors, or whatever the case may be. And that way, when they do come in, they will have that. And there's enough events that, literally there's one event at least each week. We're creating an event that a vendor can come in and showcase so that when the ordinance is passed, then we already have a really good solid ground to work with. Did that
And
kind of answer
I
your
think
question?
when you made your initial presentation, you said you would certainly going to be available to help people
Mm-hmm.
with the permit process that had never been through it.
Yeah, we have a step-by-step little, we call it a teaser, but it's a little step-by-step brochure that if they're a food vendor, this is the steps they need to take. And this is all online as well, not on our website, but the health department's website and the city's website as well. But we have that put together, so it's a really easy process for most of them to go through.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. We appreciate, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Scott.
Oh, sorry. This sounds interesting. I actually can't wait. Your blast from the past, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s on up. What genre of music are you talking about, and what type of outreach? And the reason that I'm asking is because, you know, the community, so often when we have things, they're not things that many of us are, some of us are interested in. I mean, and some of the artists, sometimes when I see things around town, the people that I don't even know. So I'm just want to make certain that, you know, that the type of music, you know, is something that will appeal to other groups in the community. So I'm just asking.
Well, the like if we're doing 80s, so it would be the top 40. I mean, that's what we're
Top
looking
40
for.
What? Like what genre of music, you know?
Music
just-
from the 80s, is that what you're looking for? I mean,
Well,
most of it's going to be
specifically-
country, rock and roll, jazz, but we'll only have 2 bands each night. It's similar to like a, not a gallery night, but like Bands on the Beach, or there's another one out in Milton. It's the same,
Right,
it's
and as I think about those, I don't see any minorities participate in those. That's why I'm asking. I mean, I'm thinking about things like reggae, jazz, R&B. I mean, I just want something that when I look at it, say, oh yeah, I know that artist, you know, I want to go down to that
I can
and see
appreciate that.
So, you know, I'm really, just really hoping that you all will look and consider that greatly. And then this cat, I love cat country. I love Brent. I'm a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll. But is that the only media sponsor? I mean, have you done any outreach to like
we have done a
Magic
couple of outreach with
106?
other ones.
Okay, because I mean, I think that's what's going to start getting some of our. I was at an event this past weekend, and it was an event for our college, for Pensacola State College, and I was talking with a young man who wanted to go back to school, and I said, well, you know, why aren't you, you know, why didn't you think about going to this event? And he mentioned, even in our own community, that, you know, I said, well, it's advertised on WNRNE. He said, what's WNRNE? He didn't know. So, you know, how far out are we reaching our younger audience, not just in here, but 93 BLX, because that's the station that our younger people listen to, in addition to Magic 106, and yes, WRNE, but very, you know, in terms of audience, I just really wanted to go out.
And
I have done-
you're doing that.
Yeah. We are doing some outreach, and we've met with a couple of the other radio stations. Unfortunately, some of them didn't come back with a package that was going to be helpful at this time. They will come back with other packages, and there'll be other series of events that we'll be providing. I mean, we basically want to showcase the amphitheater at this time so that promoters from all over will want to perform in there, and that way, that's where we're going to make our money.
Right. Now, I have one more quick question.
Ms.
I
Scott,
know that we're time.
we are in a time crunch, but yes, ma'am.
After the opening, that Easter Sunday was a beautiful event. Sunrise, Easter service was beautiful. And I noticed that was Marcus Point Baptist Church that provided that. Will other churches be given that same opportunity? Or I want to make sure that we provide the same opportunity for other religious organizations as well, that it's not the same church every year. That I would love to see a community of churches come together, but I just want to put that out there as well.
Well, currently, I'm working with the Wahoos, and there is a community, but it's next Easter. But they rented the stadium for that purpose, and they were just on the books first, is what happened.
Okay.
Anybody wants to rent it.
Yeah.
You can get a Friday, we
So
get
I know
a,
sometimes churches, well, not just churches, people can book stuff out for 5-10 years down the road. Not, you know, I want to give everybody an opportunity to
Have them call us. We'll take their money and
get a
put
good
'em in
Friday,
there.
let's get a good Friday service. Anything else? We appreciate it very much.
One question. Social media, how much are you using that in outreach and advertising?
Not yet. We're actually working on a website, and then we'll be doing Twitter and Facebook.
Right.
Mr. Murray, Mr. Reeves.
Is this going to be the only opportunity to discuss this contract that was signed on March the 20th?
I think that's coming up in audit and operations.
I just wanted to ask this question. If I wanted to book the stadium during baseball season, would I contract with you or would I contract with the ball team?
You would talk to the Wahoos. They have a special event coordinator, Shelley Yates, and they're...
So I wouldn't have to go through you
No.
to put the, now if it wasn't baseball season,
We're in discussions. We're looking at having the Wahoos be the primary schedulers for the ballpark. And there's some discussions about some sharing of revenues with that. It just makes more sense. They're set up to rent the stadium a lot easier than we are. We're pretty much outside of the stadium. We're looking to the Wahoos to manage the stadium.
so most of what you were talking about is really
Outside.
amphitheater.
That's correct.
And we're in discussions with a third party that would look at coordinating between the Wahoos and us of managing that, all non-baseball events, we'll call them. Anything else?
You know, third-party entity.
Correct. Anybody else? Thank you all very much. Anything else on administration? Mr. Spears?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, we are shifting from the construction mode into the operational mode. We have established our operational checking account with the rent deposit that was made by the Wahoos at the last meeting. Going forward, we would like to get the board's input and/or voting authority to a couple of things. Number one, if you would like to establish a purchasing amount for your staff without prior board approval, $100, $500 that staff would be authorized to execute without coming to the board. We would also like to get approval for staff in advance of the operational budget to pay the salaries, office supplies, utilities, taxes, the normal expenses that we're starting to get bills from as we move into operations. We would also like authorization to make electronic payments where possible and pay our taxes electronically. And also, we would recommend returning to the process of 2 signatures, executive director, and 1 authorized board member being authorized being either the chairman or another officer of the board versus the 2 officers that it was required for the construction. Those were the things I was asked to bring forward to you for consideration so that we can shift into operations.
Who is that coming from?
Both the city finance department as well as your own staff looking at the different authorities we need going forward.
Don't we have the cart before the horse? I mean, let's talk about the budget before we start authorizing people to sign checks.
That's the first I've seen that, or have I seen that before?
I have not seen it.
I'm just checking. You might have seen it.
No, you're.
When we start receiving utility bills, we have to be able to pay our bills.
Yeah.
And that's what we need the authorization for, is to simply pay the electric bill when it comes in, pay the gas bill when it comes in. And to pay those electronically, or we could just cut checks, that's fine, but just asking.
Let's send that out and let the board see it, and then we can vote on that next month. Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much. And, this kind of...
What's that?
So we're not going to pay our bills?
Well, I mean, how we pay our bills now? Excuse me. How do we pay our bills now?
We have a construction checking account, and then this is for operations, which is totally separate.
And we don't have an account right now set up?
We do, but I can't, unless you tell me I can pay our bills, I can't pay our bills.
Okay, I mean, I would think if we have a bill, you'd produce a check like we do now.
The issue, as Mr. Reeves and I think everyone's aware, we don't have the operational budget approved. The operational budget establishes parameters of which line items we can pay, which is what we've done with the construction budget. Now we're saying, as we go through and develop that, we are getting bills. The bills have to be paid, specifically utilities, and without specific authorization from the board via a budget, we need some mechanism to pay that.
I've got that. I missed that first part of the budget. Mr. Baker, do you want to speak on that?
Well, I think you've given your comment tonight. I hope we move quickly to some kind of motion that will be resolved this at least till our next meeting so that we can pay our ongoing regular bills. Certainly you could be one of the signers.
I missed that first part on the get the budget approval. Mr. Reeves?
What account did the full year's rent from the Wahoos go into?
It went into the CMPA non-governmental funding account. which is anytime we received any extraneous dollars that were not specifically assigned to construction, they went into that account.
And who has the ability to get that out of there?
Same signature card, any two trustees can sign.
Yeah.
Same ones that sign on this account?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, you get a bill and you get two signatures on it and you pay it. I mean,
But when
certainly
you back
certainly
that
we
up-
know that the rent is revenue, operational revenue, right?
But do I hear you saying, Nicole, you're not authorized to pay the power bill?
I'm not.
We're not. And this goes back to the forensic audit that was requested by the city to explore every single expenditure and making sure that your staff had proper authority to make those expenditures. And we passed that with flying colors without a single finding, and we would like to maintain that status. So unless the board specifically authorizes us to pay, we can't access those funds.
Could I make a motion that we allow the chair to sign those until we get a better policy in place, until maybe our next trustees meeting?
Are you
That'd be
authorize,
appropriate.
you're authorizing the staff, though, to go ahead and pay those normal bills that come to do with,
Yeah, I would say that let them pay the normal bills, at least write the check and have you sign them until maybe we get some type of policy in place at our next trustee meeting.
Which also includes salaries as well as office supplies and those things.
what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the list we were given: salaries, office supplies, utilities, and taxes.
Okay, well, the $18,000 check that we just paid to the city of Pensacola, that wasn't salaries involved in that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well,
What
That's
we're
salaries-
doing since
that's
we're
the salaries that are
transitioning
approved through the
into operating,
construction budget.
what we're doing since we're transitioning into operating is 25% of our salaries is going to be paid from the operating budget, and 75% will continue to come out of the construction budget, but we have to have authorization from the board to do that. And as we move into operations, it will increase and will come out of the construction budget into the operating budget.
Mr. Baker?
And while we're going through the next items of discussions, and I know our time's short, can you write down what would be limited but would be sufficient for us to achieve the purposes till our next meeting?
Yeah, those four things, is that correct?
Yeah.
let me make a substitute motion, Mr. Chairman.
Any motion?
I move that this board authorize the staff to pay operating bills in the short run with the same signatures that presently exist on the construction account.
Second.
Mr. Johnson, did you have a second?
Well, I don't know if I had a second, but I'm going to oppose that motion. I would rather the staff put together the bills, write the check, and you sign the checks as chair. I don't want to have staff sign.
Well, they're not, and what Mr. Reeves is referring to is that there's signatures that you're on, I'm on, I think Mr. Baker's on.
Okay,
Stay with the current payment system.
okay, fine.
Right, any two officers. Anything else on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Spears?
Did we get a second?
Yeah.
Mr. Murdy?
I had a question with regard to the allocation of the 75% and you indicated that it's going to, it's going to be skewed more and more toward operations and less.
Right.
I'm just wondering, was that an arbitrary selection or is there a basis in fact? Because, we had this discussion in large part at the last committee meeting as far as operations as to the, the amount that we're being billed by the city for various things that we really don't have any input and control on. And I don't want to start at a number that isn't justified with the indication that we can only go up from there, if in fact a lower number of allocation to operations, because candidly, we're tight on construction, but we're, as Mr. Gunner's going to speak to in a little while, we've got a huge deficit in operations, and if we start out with big numbers, we're going to be going down the wrong way in a hurry.
And that's the first I heard of that number, but, and we will hear from Mr. Gunther. I'm trying to get to that. So let's wait and see what we say there. I'm meeting with the city staff in the morning, actually, to go over some different agreements that we have out there now, what we're trying to do with additional revenue sources. Anything else on this subject? Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll make mine short. I know we're on a time restraint, but, this discussion, what Mr. Spears just brought up about salaries, electronic payments, et cetera, this I think was talked about at length on Monday about this actually should come before the Operations and Audit Committee, which brings me to the idea that maybe it's time that we consider sunsetting all three of the committees that we're about to discuss, because we've moved forward and we're at a point now that I think that I'm beginning to wonder if those are actually a necessary layer. We have 14 members of this trustee board that I think are capable of making the decisions as we move forward. So I really think it's time that we start considering sunsetting those three committees, and this board being responsible for all decisions amongst this board here that we're sitting today. So I don't know how my other trustee members feel, but I think it's time that we have that discussion.
Is that a motion?
I'd like to, well, yeah, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and sunset the committees as of May 15th. Or actually, why don't we do it May 30th.
Your motion is to sunset the Design Development Committee, Operations and Audit Committee, and Equal Business Opportunity Committee?
Yes.
Effective
May 30th.
I've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. Certainly it will invite discussion.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion, Mr. Murdy.
I don't have a problem with the motion in concept. The concern I have is the date. I think it may be premature, because I know particularly, you're waiting to complete some work and you've done all of that, and I think the rest of us that are not on that committee, certainly don't have the background and the expertise that you've developed, and I would hate to cut that short, and I don't know, Dr. Jones, I don't think is here, so I don't know if he's got anything pending. Operations, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what Mr. Gunter says and what the chairman has some discussions tomorrow. I think, and it may be that the construction, the date that, the back of the house is complete, the bond is released, that date might be more appropriate. I don't know. I'm just thinking that date may be just a little premature.
Well, that date should cover it, I hope. If it's not through by May 30th, we're in trouble.
But I'm talking about as far as releasing the bond and everything else. That's my only concern. And
we should have a CO at that point.
And if the EBO committee can, what date would you think that you would complete and render your reports?
Well, that's going to be determined on what we get from our contractors, because we're relying on both the prime and our only program manager contract to do that. And plus, we have issues that we have to resolve. But I'm in agreement that they should be sunset at certain times, and maybe we might do the first two committees and then complete the EBO when it's appropriate after that's done. But there are going to be issues that come up. So, the Equal Business Opportunity Committee, we talked about it 2 months ago about whether we were going to continue that and what was its function, and it's been redirected. So, there's always going to be concerns and issues where people are going to want to be heard. I'm not sure if that's the same kind of decision as design and operations and audit.
Council Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may ask that we table this motion till next month because of the time constraints, and there's probably details, and there might be some committees we might want to consider instating with the new development. And so I guess I'm just thinking, I'm watching that clock.
Yeah, let's put that on the agenda for next month, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, that we have the discussion about sunsetting these committees, because this committee ultimately comes before us. It's our decisions, and I think that extra layer, it's come time that we maybe remove that extra layer and that this trustee can handle all those issues. Thank you, this trustee board.
Withdraw. Councilman Johnson, Councilman Spencer withdraw their motion. Anything else under administration?
No, sir.
If not, Design Development Committee, I understand there's no meeting.
Did not meet.
Anybody from Design Development? Operations and Audit Committee, Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much. We had a very lengthy and very entertaining, I shouldn't say entertaining, but a very, well, maybe it was entertaining, but we had a lengthy conversation. Some motions were made. One of the final motions made was that I made a motion that Mr. Gunther present the motions that he made and passed. I see Mr. Gunther in the audience. If I could, so Mr. Chair, invite him up to discuss those motions. I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Gunther.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson, Mr. Chairman, board members. I
You should have a couple of budgets there, as well as the operating agreement, or the management agreement with the city. Basically, I began working on this a few weeks ago when it became clear the city didn't intend to allow additional parking on the grass on the private development parcels. You know, I also want to make it clear that this is my estimated budget. It wasn't created by staff, although Ed and Nicole did, you know, give me everything I need, and, you know, were a big help. You know, they've been directed to prepare their own budget based upon a fiscal year, which I did not think gave an accurate representation of the budget itself, or a clear picture of it either. You know, if you have a copy of the budget, you can see that the expenses without additional parking exceed revenues by approximately $310,000 annually. Now, you know, this year just started, and this shortfall, you know, can certainly be made up. But I, you know, felt like it was important for the board to be aware of this, you know, now, you know, for two reasons. You know, the first is that each home game, you know, that goes by, we miss the opportunity for additional revenues through ticket or attendance surcharges, and also revenues for additional parking. The other is that, you know, I believe there has been insufficient oversight related to decisions which affect the budget. You know, I also want to clarify that while this began as how a lack of additional parking would affect the budget, you know, I don't think anybody on our committee is pushing for that specifically. You know, we just see a need for more revenue, and additional parking on the grass on the private development parcels is, you know, is a revenue source. To explain further, the current projected shortfall is $310,000. That differs from our initial draft budget of a shortfall of $50,000 for several main reasons. One was higher than estimated insurance premiums. Two, decreased parking as a result of the city's position of not parking on the grass. Unexpected expenses as a result that CMPA require several police officers for traffic control at each baseball game. Unclear provisions within the management agreement with the city, which make it difficult to determine the actual cost of management and the startup fees each year. And then increased annual contribution for reserves for replacement. And I'll just go through these quickly. The insurance estimate, you know, was initially based on a $22 million replacement cost for the stadium. There were several add-ons, like for pavers, insurance of the field, that kind of thing, which increased the cost. The initial budget, you know, contemplated utilizing all the private development parcels for parking. You know, I've put kind of a best case scenario for parking revenue on there. It could certainly be less. You know, it was the city's position that, well, it's in code that you can't park on the grass, but they've, you know, given an exemption before. You know, I think everybody would prefer not to park on the grass, but, you know, I think we need to look at, you know, any revenue sources here. You know, obviously, there's a couple parcels there. There's a private development. There's the former museum site, and the site just south of the retention pond. The site that is the former museum site is pretty much ready to go, and the site south of the retention pond may require some curb cuts and that kind of thing. So anyway, and then the officers, you know, that's estimated to be about $40,000 a year for traffic control. The management agreement provision I mentioned was, you know, the management agreement specifies CMPA will pay the city $160,000 in year one startup costs, which once combined with the other $381,054 in costs results in an annual bill of $541,054. The problem is in the management agreement, it did not provide for any reduction in those year one startup costs. It just provides for, you know, that $541,054, although there's, you know, a maximum, you subtract the revenues from that, so there's like a maximum out of pocket of around $270. The city's draft budget, which I saw a copy of last week, increases reserve from $50,000 a year to $150,000, which is probably a good idea. You know, the faster we can build up our reserve, the faster we could self-insure for, you know, turf and pavers and those kind of things. Those are the issues affecting the budget. I also mentioned what I felt was a lack of oversight. And, the Operations and Audit Committee was told that the agreement for services with the city would come back to us for review before it was executed, and it wasn't. And unfortunately, the actual agreement bears little resemblance to the agreement that was finally executed that you have a copy of. For example, the proposal does not mention anything regarding a fiscal year, and the actual final agreement states that the CMPA would be responsible for no more than $256,000 and change in any given fiscal year. The only problem is there are 4 fiscal years over the next 3 years, so that could be a pretty huge hit as far as additional expenses that I don't think the board or our committee was really aware of. I mentioned the first year startup costs, which weren't defined, and then there was also a provision inserted that any profits realized from city services that exceed the city's fees would be used for capital improvements, maintenance, and repairs, and not flow back to the CMPA, which really wasn't addressed in the proposal either. I realized we were trying to get this managed agreement passed through quickly, and that's probably the reason for it. But this is a huge line item in our budget. It doesn't make sense to execute a contract like this without review. I'm not blaming neighborhood services or public works or anyone else. I realize that they don't write contracts, but nevertheless, we still have a problem here, and I hope that the board will consider that. If you've read through that agreement, we've just had a motion to sunset an Operations and Audit Committee. We've just started the operations phase, of this park. So to me, it just wouldn't make any sense to sunset our committee. Should be our whole focus, is to show up and review items to make sure we have the money to pay for them, whether they be an agreement for services or whether they be, a motion to borrow money from Studer to replace seating or those kind of things. Those should be reviewed with a copy of the budget and allow our committee to make a recommendation. But anyway, the Operations and Audit Committee respectfully requests that the board adopt the following recommendations. 1, request an addendum to the agreement for services to clarify that the amount the CMPA will be required to pay will not exceed $256,054 in any given 265-day period.
365.
I must have had a typo, I'm sorry. What did I say, 265? 365-day period. The addendum should also provide the amount by which the first year's subsidy will decrease over the contract period. The CMPA make a commitment to have the Operations and Audit Committee provide recommendations on financial decisions which come before the board. The committee's primary focus will be to make sure decisions are made with budget constraints in mind. CMPA immediately requests a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment to allow parking in the grass during baseball games and special events until the parcels are released for private development, and that would be on the former Maritime Museum site and on the site just south of the retention pond. The staff immediately prepare a plan which will balance the operations and maintenance budget. This plan will review the variable ticket and variable attendance surcharges on all tickets sold pursuant to Section 5 of the use agreement, which provides that the fees be reviewed no less than every 3 years in order to cover the maintenance and operations and expenses of the park. And 5, that staff proceed with preparation and approval of a shared maintenance agreement for those who will be leasing the private development parcels. And that's basically just, so any further development that happens in the future, they will share in the maintenance of the retention ponds and other common areas and that kind of thing. So we can build that into our as a reduction of our expenses going forward. So that was it. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilman Spencer.
Thanks. Fred, thank you for that thorough report and analysis and commentary. one thing I would ask all of us to most definitely press pause on considering parking on the grass. I know that may seem actually as a collateral issue compared to what you were talking about, but let's get input from Steve Dana and the landscape contractors. As I know, there was a kind of a decision. We were at a fork in the road in making some decisions about what would be necessary to make that more suitable for parking. We've got irrigation heads. We have certain infrastructure that in no way really anticipated it. Not that a one-time event wouldn't be possible, but you get 5 consecutive days in certain periods of the year. It's just something that I think we need to be very careful about. And from a social engineering perspective, the parking within the city fabric appears to actually be one of the amenities that I'm getting feedback. People are loving the fact now that they're walking and touching storefronts. I think our storefront owners and retailers are enjoying, as has been told to us by urban planners, is do not create one focused event parking space. What you do is you lose the synergy of what happens when mom, dad, the kids, friends walk through the city fabric, through the grid. And I think this discussion would have more mileage if, in fact, we were sitting here today and all of us had been bombarded with complaints of how horrific the parking situation has been since day one. But in fact, I think that the expectations that were painted, forecasted by the media, proved to be actually quite the contrary. It's been positive. But I know that we're meeting as a board, thinking about our discussing our financial stability, the importance that. But at the same time, we've clearly told people in the district how positive the benefit and the impact would be with having people park. And we've had land planners come to Institute for Human and Machine Cognition as lecturers. I've heard it more than 5 times from different players.
And I'm going to tag on that. I'm going to have to close this in a minute. We'll have to re-adjourn if that's where we're going. But Mr. Guthrie, I appreciate your comments too. I'm not sure if I appreciate 2 comments that insufficient oversight, if that's directed towards me, because I've tried to stay with them. And a couple corrections. I'm with Mr. Councilman Spencer on the parking. I have talked to the city about changing this. They're not budging. I've argued with them about they're letting people over here. They said they've noticed these people because there's people parking this grass parking lot right immediate to our west that we could be getting over to our side. So it's coming a little bit of competition. There's plenty of parking. But there's some things in that budget that we're working on with. We're working on it tomorrow. As a matter of fact, there's $100,000 of police that have been put towards us that that I've still gone back and forth with them. An additional $40,000 added just for the game days. Not to mention $60,000 that for somebody to police it. Which, my argument is Plaza de Luna that who's paying for that? Police, the city is, and they should be paying for this. And that's something we're going back and forth on. You'd knock out that $100,000, and with some additional revenue that we're going to make off our parking lot we already have, the 250 lots that are available to us, 100 go to baseball. Then we have the lot other times. With that additional revenue, and we have, there's 150,000 in here for capital reserves that, again, Plaza de Luna is not putting aside 150,000 for capital reserves, and we're probably not going to either to start with. But, our budget, and we don't have the naming rights, and that's obviously something that we hope to get, and we've been.
And how about
our side could be up to 200,000.
How about the big signs?
I'm going to call Councilman Pratt because she's had her name up, hand up.
I'm going to have to leave after the press thing, so I just wanted to put an idea out there about the grass parking. As I understand, we have some responsibility as the CMPA to park the baseball team people, whoever for the baseball team are coming for the game. And I understand the reservations about nightly parking on the grass, and if you can't count on a rainy night, you don't want to be parking on there. But there might be a way to sort of work with the team and say, all right, we're going to try and park you guys one night a week on the grass so we don't have to pay for you to park somewhere else. And that might be a workable compromise of just an occasional use, and it keeps us from having to do it. I mean, those aren't the people who are going to be doing the shopping, and it just might be a way, because I understand, I mean, the urban idea is great, but we also have a budget that we've been preparing for a long time, and how do we deal with that budget and meet the needs that we need for that park. So that's just an idea, if there's a way to maybe just allow the team to park on that grass one night a week, or one night a series or something like that. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Reeves.
As far as your oversight is concerned, you know, nothing personal. I just wondered if have you seen the budget that shows us being $10,000 in the black? Have you personally seen it?
10,000 in the black?
10,000 per year in the black.
I haven't seen that one lately.
Okay. I just feel like, you know, we're
Listen,
not.
these numbers are so fluid right now. We're meeting, besides my meeting tomorrow at 10, I'm meeting with Gulf Power tomorrow afternoon to figure out what our meters are telling us.
We got the 20% shared income deal walling around. We got 200,000 from Lamar advertising walling around. I just think we need to be a little bit more transparent, both on the city's part and our part, so that we all see everybody's cards and they put them on the table. I mean,
There's a lot of things that we hope will land, and that's where we are. Mr. Gunther, do you have something else?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not married to the parking on the grass idea. I mean, I think it's either going to be, actually parking on the grass is probably going to be more beneficial to the city as far as revenue than it is to us, just because of the limit on what we would be responsible for each year. So that, you know, that's not the main purpose. If we'd rather just have additional ticket surcharges, then so be it. I mean, that's no problem. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not blaming you personally for anything. What I'm stating is I don't think this board should approve one person to negotiate a contract on that large of a budget item without any review, because we clearly have a contract now with problems in it. And you know, I realize you're a volunteer just like everything else, and you're not an attorney, but you know, this is definitely something that should have come before, you know, a group of people to look over and catch some things like that. That's my only point.
I still, if we want to call back a special budget meeting, we can, or we can push it off. But as I said, this budget's a work in progress, and if we need to change things, we're going to change things. I've argued the parking, I've argued everything with them, and like I said, we're still getting other numbers in, and we'll see where we end up.
And I apologize, I missed one thing. Mr. Reeves did have a motion at our meeting, and I didn't know if he wanted me to present that or if that was approved. Did you want to present that, or?
hell, I don't even remember what it was.
That was the motion regarding having our attorney review the proposal to see if the terms matched up with our eventual agreement.
Fiscal year and calendar year, was that it? The fiscal year?
The RFP.
All terms of it.
Yeah.
Councilman Johnson.
Match the RFP because there were some significant differences.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to comment on a few things. I think we take the parking lot off the table right now. I mean, I'm not even sure we control that parking. Doesn't the city control those lots? I mean, the developer lot, the out parcels, they control those, right? So we don't have control over those.
They control them in terms of leasing them to potential developers.
Right, okay. And then, you know, Mr. Spencer brought up some interesting points. I mean, we've got a sprinkler system there. You know, we're going to possibly damage our sod. We've got parking that seems to be adequate. I heard Mr. Flaherty say that everything's running smooth. I personally have been to 3 games. I have seen no parking issues. I've seen empty parking spots on asphalt out here at our 225 parking spots. So I'm not hearing this wave of people complaining about parking. I'm actually hearing good stories about people that parked at St. Joseph Church and that park for $2 and got on a one of those whatever you call them, rickshaw, and paid the guy $2 to get to the park. So I'm hearing good things. So I think this discussion about parking on our out parcels, I think that's just a dead issue this year. Maybe we look at it next year, but I think we should move beyond that. As far as ticket surcharges and et cetera, from what I understand, that we can't look at that for 3 years. So I believe our contract states that we can't look at that for 3 years. Am I right, Mr. Spears? Is it 3? But anyhow, that's what I understand. So we're not at a 3-year period. To start talking about ticket surcharges right now in the middle of this contract we have, I think is really inappropriate when we have this 3-year time frame. So I think that we need to be reminded of that. But as far as parking on the side now, after thinking about it for 2 days, I'm out on that deal. I think we move on away from that.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. And again, I think we are premature on some things until we see what our numbers are looking like. And
the parking is kind of a gnat on an elephant's rear compared to, depending on whose budget you looked at when. I mean, we have some much more exciting potentiality to improve our revenue picture than just parking on the grass, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir. I've surfaced some, and they haven't gone anywhere. But we've got, like I said, we're early in this process. We don't even know what our bills are going to be. I'm excited what's happening with the baseball team, and I will say that Mr. Studer has he heard me griping to someone at one of the ballparks about some of the police that we're paying, and he said, "Well, we can talk about that. We'll offer." I mean, I think there's potential there to work out to where our budget needs to be, and I'm not as concerned as some others are at this point. Mr. Baker.
Just wanted to say, I'm sorry I missed the meeting for Operation on Monday, but we really should thank Fred for he's been doing an awful good job on trying to put together all this stuff.
We appreciate that, too, as a volunteer as well. We thank you, Mr. Gunther.
We can revisit this after the press conference.
Do y'all want to revisit this after the press conference, or wait till next month when we get more information?
Revisit while it's current. Won't take long.
Okay.
And I think we could throw in, if we do an addendum, we could throw in the covenant with the community as well. Just
think.
in the spirit of unity, harmony, and cooperation.
In the spirit.
All right, we're gonna adjourn till the press conference is over. We're gonna move this podium to my right, and we will adjourn for about we'll call the press conference about 5 minutes late. But and everybody, I'd love for everybody in the CMPA to come up behind the podium, as well as anybody on the opening committee and city council members. And we will start that at 3:05. All right, I appreciate everybody coming out today, and we've got a long time coming, a great announcement coming up about our June 9th opening of the official opening of the park. As I've said before, a lot of people have been in that baseball stadium that opened April 5th, which was a great event. That's just one aspect of this park. This park has many elements that belong to everybody here, everybody in the city. Everybody in the county, anybody who wants to use it, that park's for the public. And part of it, one of the tenants in the park is baseball stadium. And we're going to hear from the president of Pensacola Baseball in a minute. He's going to use that stadium 70 nights a year and a few other nights around those times. And then there's a bunch of non-baseball events that will happen in the stadium. And it's exciting. And we have the amphitheater we're going to talk about in a minute. We have the breakwater that we have money set aside to build, and the permit finally is moving through the department. That looks like we're going to get that built sometime in the next year or so. Hopefully we'll start on that, which then opens up the door for a marina out there as well. But behind me stand some city council members, the committee members of Community Maritime Park Association, who many of these members have started in September of 2006. So we're coming up on 6 years of meetings at least once a month. And as the one today is probably going to last longer than our normal 3 or 4 hours that they go on, but everybody's been dedicated. And while we have little issues that come and go, as you look across the streets to the south of us here, you see what everybody's done. And it's exciting, and we hope everybody shows up on the 9th, and we'll say a little bit more about that. Before I do, I'd like to introduce, we have two co-chairs that were the opening committee of this park, and they were Bruce Baldwin, who is the president of Pensacola Baseball, and John Asmar. John, up back here behind me somewhere. They never stand next to each other. And John Asmar, who is the chief of staff here for the city. And with that, I'd like to call on Bruce Baldwin for a few comments. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. We're very proud and honored to be involved with the grand opening of the entire Maritime Park. As you know, on April 5th, that I feel that we successfully opened up everybody's dream behind us, including the community, certainly the mayor and his staff, the city council, and the CMPA board were integral part of getting all of this developed, and all their toil, hard work, and has paid off. And I think the evolution of it is coming into place on the 9th of June, and we look forward to being part of that. I think that's evident with the vision of the cities, what is being brought into the community. Just in the first 5 days of the baseball season, you know, between the baseball team, Singer Theater, the Civic Center, and other events around town, over 35,000 plus people came into downtown Pensacola, and that will continue throughout the year as more baseball games are played, but certainly with the addition of City Parks and Rec and their work on getting additional events into the amphitheater and stuff. But we are very proud to be part of that, and we thank everybody for their support.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. And that, next up, I'd like to bring up the mayor of the City of Pensacola, Ashton Hayward.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to say hello, and truthfully, I want to thank Collier Merrill, the chairman of the CMPA, and what he has done for our community in rallying the team that stands behind me, and that includes the city council, all the trustees and the board members that have served on the CMPA board, and you, the public out there that sit out there that show up at these meetings and give your input. But this is a time to heal and to move on. As Mr. Merrill talked about, June 9th is going to be a big day to open the park up. And bring people from around the region to the city of Pensacola and to our waterfront. I think all of y'all know what the water does to people. It makes people feel good. You're sitting out on beautiful Pensacola Bay, and we're going to have an amazing amphitheater, which, you know, all the cultural events that we have in Pensacola that we're lucky enough to have, the symphony, the opera, the ballet, you'll see them performing. You also see other local acts and national acts performing right here on the water in downtown Pensacola. So from our office, we just want everyone to know it's a good time for Pensacola. It's a monumental time. We've got 30 acres on the water that we're developing, and then we're going to continue to develop more of our waterfront and create one of the best cities in America. So truthfully, thanks for everything that everyone's done. And I can't not thank David Flaherty and Kim Carmody for Neighborhood Services that's going to take over the operations of the park. And they've been a big asset for everybody standing up here today. And again, thanks everybody for coming out today.
Thank you, Mayor Hayward. A few people I want to thank, and then we're going to give a lineup of the day's activities on June 9th. I want to thank Skip and Martha Hunter, obviously, that were big contributors to build the amphitheater we're about to see, are about to be finished with, and also Rishi and Quint Studer for everything they've done. You know, this park wouldn't have been what it is today without the vision of Vince Wibbs and Admiral Jack Fetterman, who did great work and are both deceased now. But they knew this vision was coming, and I think it's a hats off to everybody behind me and in the city for making this happen. The amphitheaters we've talked about is going to be through May 15th, and we're going to get the grass planted. And as you know, the amphitheater is going to be a crowning jewel. I think it's the best in the country, overlooking the water. We can put about 5,000 people just in that berm area, looking at the stadium, of having a VIP area, maybe up in the stadium, overlooking the amphitheater as well for people that want to watch it from above. The bathrooms will be shared, and we have a lot of activities going on in the park. We have 9 spaces there for commercial leasing on the private side that people will come in that are compatible with the park. I mean, a lot of people have asked for things, and the oversight committee has decided what's best used for the park, but it's a revenue source that'll come in at some point. But for today's activities, we've got, for today's announcements, on June 9th, we're going to have a huge day, starting with a run that morning, and have, let me get Ash and the committee, y'all come up here, Bruce, and everybody announce at the same time. But we have a lot of activities, the runs. We've had some bands I'm about to announce, and I want to thank, where'd Scott Mitchell go? He's hiding in the back because he hadn't had any sleep in 2 days since announcing the lineup for DeLuna Fest. But the organizer of DeLuna Fest, Scott Mitchell, and his team, Clint and others, have helped us put together a great band assortment. But we start with a run that morning. We have all kinds of kids activities. As a matter of fact, we went way over our budget on kids activities, but it's worth it. And I should say, no money from CMPA has come out of the budget to do that. We've gone out and raised funds to put this together. We have balloon rides. We have kids activities. We actually have 2 balloons that'll be tethered that'll take people up in them. Is that correct? We have free hot dogs are going to be offered inside the stadium from 11 to 1. Vendors, anytime you want to go in the stadium, you can. There'll be vendors there, but from 11 to 1, all the hot dogs you can eat. There'll be tours going on there. We'll have a community stage, and I'll give out handouts here, and everybody can have one to see what's all on the community stage. We have a community stage that'll have a full lineup from 10 to 5:30, and then we have the actual ribbon cutting, which will be at around noontime out on the amphitheater. We'll have everybody that's responsible you see here today, and many, many others that will be in the audience and help with that dedication. And then we'll start with bands, starting with Modern Eldorados, and Mr. Mitchell might help you with some of these bands. The Gills, Antoine Knight is somebody I'm not familiar with. The first 2 bands are local. Where's Scott? Antoine Knight, who's that?
That's a national touring rhythm and blues, national touring rhythm and blues act based, originally Antoine's from Pensacola. That's why we booked him. Mm-hmm. So are the Gills. They're based out of Nashville now, but they are originally from Pensacola.
Katie Rogers.
Katie Rogers, another country and western leaning musical act, once again out of Nashville, but based out of Pensacola, or originally from Pensacola. Shamar Allen and the Underdogs, a great act out of New Orleans, we think would give a lot of broad range of appeal. Going to be a good lead-in band to the big. You go ahead and announce the national, the big name.
I did read about Shamar Allen, the Underdogs. They say out of New Orleans they are the blend of hip-hop, jazz, and funk. And even some Latin rhythms mixed in. And then at 7:30 to 8:50 out on the amphitheater, and once again, this is all free and open to the public all day long. We have crafts and everything going on, the hot dogs, concessions going on. And at 7:30, we have the Charlie Daniels Band that'll break in, be the final act of the amphitheater that night. And then we'll close it out with fireworks immediately, concluding the Charlie Daniels Band there in the amphitheater in the park. Once again, June 9th, all free. Any other comments? How about a hand for everybody behind me here? There's a lot of other activities that I'll give you out handouts for anybody that wants them, and we have some posters that are put together, and we hope, once again, it's all free, and we hope everybody shows up. Great event. It's been a long time coming on that park, and there's many more things to come as we go forward, and we have, we had some tough budget times. We had to cut some things out, but we had more kids areas coming and stuff like that. But June 9th will give you a good idea of everything that can happen in that park, and as the mayor mentioned, City Service has done a good job of putting things in the park over the next 6 months, and there's a schedule of that on the website of things that are coming, movie nights, some farmers markets, all kinds of stuff going on in the park, and other bands that'll be coming throughout the year. Once again, we appreciate everybody coming out. Anybody that wants to stay, we're going to reconvene our meeting and try to be over by dark. So if anybody wants to come back to that, you're welcome to. Thank you for coming out. We'll reconvene the Community Maritime Park Association meeting. And we have still got a couple things on the items, on the agenda besides going back to the budget talks. And I understand 2 members, Ms. Scott, Councilman Johnson, have to leave at 9:45. Excuse me, 3:45.
Plus, I have to leave early, too.
All right, where are we on the quorum?
There's Reeves.
There's 8, that's a quorum.
So with Mr. Reese, we do have a quorum, and we're going to lose our quorum if we're voting on anything in
20 minutes.
20 minutes. All right, we're back in talking about the budget again. I want to emphasize what I said, to me, it's still a work in progress. And I understand where we are with the budget we got out there. I understand what Mr. Reeves said about some, quite frankly, some advertising potential. As I said, we have a naming right potential that's not listed here, or it's listed at a low amount that, we've heard numbers that are higher than that. And we've got the potential of additional revenues that come in if we come up with this other agreement on how we're going to manage the stadium. So when I say that, the budget, I just personally, I'm not overly concerned about it until we figure out what our actual numbers are, and then we have to figure out where we are. All right. Comments, Mr. Murdy.
Well, as the chairman of the Operations Committee indicated, it was a long and fairly intense meeting. But what came out of that is my recollection, and Mr. Gunter, can correct me if I'm wrong, but each of the proposals that he submitted, they were massaged to one extent to another, but they were motions. Each one is a separate motion that he presented. Each one of them was, I think, unanimously approved. So I think that, and that amounted to, recommendations, because the committee obviously can't take action. But I think it's important to note, I understand work in progress, and we also understand how some things got done in a hurry in order to get it done. But I think it's also, when you see numbers, that there is a significant, $250,000 deficit for every year projected for 10 years, and then large chunk of potential revenue is taken out by the city, and then big chunks of money are added or allocated to us from the city without our knowledge or input, or it's just concerning because, one, we're trustees, we've got an obligation to the public, and, and as committee members, we've got, and I don't want to defer things, I just wanted to make it out front end in the, in the open. The city assigned arbitrarily these obligations to us, and then just tied our hands on the parking, absolutely none of it, and that was a significant course. We did not intend to micromanage. I appreciate Councilman Spencer's, we didn't say that you had to do this for the sprinklers or that was, no one proposes parking if it's red, if it's raining, but just to have it arbitrarily amounts, very large amounts, saddled with us and then take our primary source of revenue away, we just, we took a stand, and it was unanimous that, they ought not to tie our hands, and that was the recommendation. And I understand you've been working on it, but you said you weren't getting anywhere. If they're going to hit us with the expenses, they need to give us some latitude, and that's all we were looking for. Not that we were going to start parking there, but just that we had the ability, if the proper operational safeguards were implemented.
Well, and again, as Councilman Spencer said, it's a city ordinance, unless, and, I heard.
And it was represented to us that it was it would be and I asked that question specifically, it was not an ordinance, it is something that is, yeah, in the development code, and that there is a method for either amendment or waiver, and that's the specific action that, the board unanimously recommended, or the committee unanimously recommended to this board.
But Mr. Johnson, Councilman Johnson, has said that he's changed his mind. And I'm going to change my mind too, because I think parking is such an insignificant part of the overall budget situation. Let's not worry about parking. I'll give up parking on the grass if we get a few other things that mean real money.
All right, you want the floor, Mr. Reeves?
No.
Anybody else want to address Mr. Murdy and the parking issue?
The one thing about the parking issue, I believe that it wasn't unanimous. I believe that almost every vote was not unanimous. I think Mr. Owens actually voted against park on the grass, and I've changed my mind. I'm ready. Let's set that aside until maybe before next baseball season. I think that that's just an issue we can keep ticking around, but I'm ready to move on to the other issue if we could. Mr. Chair, thanks.
All right, what else do y'all want to talk about? Mr. Gunther. Is Mr. Guthrie, he made those presentations, and I assume you've deferred to him as chairman?
Yes, I have, right. I made a motion that he presents those motions that he made and passed, not all unanimously, though.
Mr. Chair, I think all of us in the committee meeting based on, would agree that if we want to table the, the recommendation or request to park on the grass, that's fine. But we had 5 other recommendations that we would like the board to consider. If you'd like, I'd read them out individually, or?
Please.
Okay. Request an addendum to the agreement for service. Well, first of all, I'll go with Mr. Reeves because it leads into that. Request that our attorney review the contract for the agreement for services to see if the proposal matches the contract. If it does not, then we would request an addendum to the agreement for services to clarify that the amount the CMPA will be required to pay the city will not exceed $256,054 in any given 365-day period. This addendum should also provide the amount by which the first year's subsidy will decrease over the contract period.
Mr. Murray.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And question, it's been, it was denominated on the, what came from the city as first year opening expenses. By definition, they should have vanished, not decreased. They should vanish at the end of the first year.
But there's a lot of other reasons to have an addendum. I mean,
I agree.
It just.
That was just an observation.
We've got a motion on the floor and a second. Does this have to do with your 3-year versus 4-year as well?
Well, it has to do with the fact that the contract states a fiscal year and the proposal stated per year. So we could theoretically be on the hook for paying 4 years of fees over a 3-year period, if it's not clarified.
Well, and I think there's a little more than that, because that's the basis of our whole argument with the master developer, was that the response to the request for productions had one thing, and then the performance or lack thereof, was entirely different. Here there was an RFP, and then the agreement that came out, there's some significant variations. And, if we're going to be consistent, I think we need to, have the attorney look at it and just say, it's not a problem, and if so, but he's identified a very specific problem. And, I think that alone justifies a review and to make sure that it's, that it's clear.
Do we know if Mr. Fleming looked at this contract?
I can't answer that question. I'm not certain one way or the other, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I see Mr.
But you did say that you couldn't have him look at it without authorization for the board, didn't you?
I did ask that the committee forward that recommendation to the board, so the board instructed me to incur that cost, as the committee does not have that authority.
Well,
I know
it's a contract, so hopefully it's not going to be a major event, but I think it's a big number of dollars over a long period of time, and so, I think to do it without some sort of legal oversight, we would be remiss in our obligation.
Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, can I call Mr. Asmar up for some clarification as you understand it? Would you be willing to do that, Mr. Asmar? And so that maybe we can clear this up without incurring a $100,000 bill with Mr. Fleming? Thank you.
I suspect it might be less than that.
In other words, this is free?
Good afternoon. Yes, sir. I'm free. This is free. This is pro bono work right here. Listen, it's a 3-year. What was contemplated for us is not 4 years, but 3 years. Whether it's fiscal or calendar, that was probably just an oversight. But, we're looking at a baseball season. And so we started this year behind the 8 ball because a contract of this sort should have been in play 6 months ago in order for us to have a successful baseball season outside of all the events. And so the city picked up the ball and ran with it on the short time period of time. I'm not aware that Mr. Fleming looked at it from your side. I know that we internally looked at it from our side. And at the request of the chair, we diligently looked at it to come to the rescue so that we could remain and have operations and management operations immediately on April 1st, so that we could get you insurance immediately on April 1st. We had probably maybe a 35-day window in order for us to do all that. So I'm sure that there are things in the cracks, but this is an agreement between two friendly government bodies, and I can tell you that it's 3 years, and I look at it as baseball season. So, at any time at that third year, what our intent from the city's perspective was get up and running, work out all these kinks, right? Get some accurate numbers so that this board can rebid it with some accuracy and really have an opportunity to present your case before the private sector in hopes to get somebody to take it over long term. And I think in my opinion, why you had such a limited amount of responses is because of the risk and the uncertainty. And so if you'll work with us, we'll certainly work with you and get those numbers for you so that we can revisit this in the second year and we can see what the revenues are and what the expenditures are and fine-tune things and maximize. To me, as I expressed to the chairman, what you really need is a business manager to take the opportunities that are presented to you in the form of revenue opportunities, put together a plan of action to maximize those revenue opportunities, whether it be promoting non-baseball games or advertising or selling a merchandise or all of these things that have not been discussed that need to be discussed. And let's get together and put together a business plan to achieve those at the highest and best results so that you do have the accurate numbers you need. And these little issues will probably resolve themselves as we move forward.
Mr. Reeves.
Go ahead, Mr. Murray, you can go first.
My only response to that, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We've all got great intentions, and we're all on the same team. We've worked through a lot, and we want to work through a lot. The only hang-up that I think I have is that as a trustee and as an attorney, that imposes the highest duty under the law, and that is a fiduciary duty. And I think when things are done that without our involvement or without our knowledge or without complete, even in the, justified because of the rush, I think we're exposed for not doing our duty, and that's an uncomfortable position for me, and I think for, perhaps for other members of the board. And so I'm not trying to be antagonistic or a deal killer. Nobody wants this more than I do. It's a commitment I personally made to Vince and Jack years ago, and I want to see it through. And so I'm on the same team. I just want us to meet our legal obligations and to make sure that we can't be held accountable for lack of due diligence.
I certainly understand.
Mr. Reeves.
Really built into the response to the request for proposals was a $256,000 deficit into the proposal. But also in the proposal, there was not all the income sources were in that proposal. I think what you're saying is, since we're all in this together, whatever clarifications we need to do as far as the contract is concerned, we can do.
Well, Mr. Reeves, let me condition your statement with this. The response to the RFP from the city was our best guess, and I think that's what we presented to you. And we said, so we provided not to exceed figures. And the mayor's staff the mayor has directed the staff to do just what I suggested, and that is let's limit our expenses as much as we can, and let's maximize our revenue possibilities so that subsidy is not there. And so that's what we're doing. So, when I say we can work together, I think and also in that management agreement is, I believe, a monthly accounting or a monthly, presentation about how we're doing, and that would be the opportunity, not from a legal perspective, but for us to seek guidance from you as trustees. Are you satisfied that we are moving in the right direction as Are we maximizing the revenue opportunities? Because we really haven't begun to take a look at that. I mean, obviously the amphitheater is not going to be open to June 9th. We've got a portion of the park that's not open yet. And we have a community that hasn't really seen the park of what it could do. And so I think this 6 months is going to be a learning experience for all of us. And so now, if that requires an amendment, because I assume you were talking formalities rather than informalities.
Well, I was really talking both. If we could just get the informalities into the agreement so you don't feel like you contractually agreed to something that there's some ambiguity about. That's all.
Well, I think what we could do, and without knowing what all the issues are, is we could have a memorandum of understanding. I mean, I don't want to go through the whole process. I mean, I think that these things, it's going to be a living list. I mean, we're going to, as we proceed, we're going to have, well, we need to do this. And that will be helpful to you as trustees when you put it out for bid in 3 years, or 2 years rather, because you want to have a year in advance. So you want to work out you want to figure out how you want to manage and operate this park. And so use the city's resources to help develop that. We're very good about organizing and planning and setting the stage and presenting the information and then giving it to the private sector and moving forward. So that's what we're doing.
Mr. Reeves.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you know who the insurance that we had to quickly get, do you know what agency or company that's with?
Mr. Reeves, I do not. I know that we went from our risk manager, and then our risk manager put it out for some type of bid. So we lumped it in with the city stuff, so I could have the risk manager come talk to you about that. I just don't know.
Well, all I'm saying is I saw one budget where insurance was $42,000 a year now, depending on what year you're talking about. And then I saw another budget where it was $232,000. I mean, how could there be that much disparity?
Well, there is the requirements that were presented to us was just straight form insurance. And then we were advised at much later time that the insurer of the bonds or the banks may have other additional requirements. And so we're still working through those issues that we weren't aware of and that were passed along to us. And so those things are being developed. So I don't know what the exact budget was or where we're at in that process. I can tell you that you are insured. You were insured when the CO was issued. And you please understand, what you all know, that you can't, because of the hurricane season, you have to get property insurance secured before the hurricane season. So, we were underneath the gun to do that. But I know that it was bid out. And I know that, if I recall correctly, more than one company responded with numbers. And so I do know that there was some competition involved.
Okay, so the fact that my cousin didn't get a chance to bid on it, he just didn't know about it.
We'll make sure your cousin's on the list next time, sir.
Every year. And we're insuring things to that. I mean, that was a debate I had with Barker Finance about the insurance and do we insure the pavers? It was an extra $5,000 to insure these pavers.
But you can deal with your deductible. There's a lot of things that you can deal with, but
Well, what I told them is we need to make it, let's get through this year and then we sit down next year. I want to emphasize something John Asmore is saying right here is that, I know where the agreement says, but it also says this budget I just got from Fred, and again, he said it's his budget, so I'm not sure where it's coming, but I've heard this talk with John too. Okay, now we got to have 4 police officers every game. And I've rented police officers before, and they're $150 a piece, regardless if you use them an hour or 8 hours, and they're $150 a piece. There's 4 of them, that's $600, 70 games, that's $42,000. We never anticipated having police officers. They're saying, well, that's your stadium. You got to ensure the security. That's something we have to talk about. That's also where, as I said earlier, Mr. Suter overheard me complaining about some stuff, and he said, listen, I'll help with some stuff like that. He didn't have to, but he said he would. And there's then the $60,000 police thing that's kind of stuck in this budget. All of it, to me, you know, if we come to the end of the year and they say, well, you got agreement, you got to stick with it, and we say, no, we don't, you know. I mean, it's city money, CMPA money. It's, if we say, you know, we don't have the $300,000 to give you, we want to adjust the budget, and we're going to adjust the budget. And I said there's $150,000 in this expense. It's capital reserve. I don't think we anticipate sticking aside $150,000 capital reserve right now, but that's, again, up to the.
Take it out of our salaries.
But the capital reserve is also a part of the use agreement. Now, it would seem to me that the other party to the use agreement would have the opportunity to waive that the first year when everything's brand new. Again, all I want to do is whatever we got to do, if we got to rob a bank, we ought to try for this to be a balanced budget, that's all.
Well, I can tell you right now, you take out the capital reserve and take off the police and we're balanced. You start to add some advertising in there, we get a naming right that has been talked about. And
if we could get 20% of everything that happened down there.
Or 25% is what I'm trying to get, so that's where we are. Councilman Johnson.
I'm gonna have to leave there, but I agree. I think everybody at this table hopes that we have a balanced budget. But I have to leave now at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. I know, Ms. Scott, you're behind him. We do have a motion on the floor on that. I guess he can't make it. I don't know who made the motion. I guess Mr. Murdy.
Mr. Murdy made the motion, Mr. Reed second.
Will you read the motion again?
Motion was to request the attorney to review the contract to determine if it is consistent with the RFP response and clarifies CMPAs not to pay over $256,054 in any 365-day period.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay as well. Let's show a hand on the ayes. 7-2. All right, thank you. All right, we said we'll go by these items one by one.
Number 2 is the CMPA make a commitment to have the Operations and Audit Committee provide recommendations on financial decisions which come before the board. The committee's primary focus will be to make sure decisions are made with budget constraints in mind.
I will make that motion.
You know, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Well, we're not absent yet. Because
We're
Mr. Baker came in.
Do we have a quorum?
You have 8 of 14, you have a quorum.
The motion is, do I have a second on the motion?
I second.
Yes, that all financial stuff goes before the Operations Audit Committee, and yet the chairman just said he wants to dissolve that committee, so I don't follow that.
Well,
but that's
maybe
his
we ought to
personal
get a new
request.
chairman.
You know, I mean, that wasn't an action of the board, and there's been discussion about,
Okay.
when the timing, and he agreed to table it for a month. There's a lot to be going on here in the next month or two. So, I think it's incumbent upon us as trustees to, if we're trustees, we need to look at some stuff.
Dottie.
I appreciate Fred coming forward with this, and I think this would go a long way towards making the community feel a little more at ease. That's how this is going to continue to work to the benefit of the entire community. Because the only opportunity to really discuss any of the potential good changes or reversals of problems is in committee, because you folks are always on a time constraint. And Mr. Johnson, who wants to get away from those committee meetings, is the first one to leave your full board meetings. So to get away with the subcommittee meetings where you are allowed to talk as much as you need to resolve something, bring it here, then that's it. So I believe what you're proposing here makes absolute sense, because you can't be the only person that they call when something's done. You have a business store, you have a life outside, and you're doing the best you can on these have-to-do midnight decisions. But they shouldn't be midnight decisions, because the committee should be anticipating, and should be discussing ahead of time, so that when the management team is saying, what do you want to do about this, there's already a policy or already a mindset that's been discussed with the board. And that's where I think your committees need to shift gears, not from we're rubber stamping everything to we're thinking ahead of the management team to prepare the board to be in response in that position. So I just encourage you to continue and to have everything go through the committee before.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Other comments? Ms. Carter.
I tend to agree with that, because we found that a lot of things happened that we don't expect to happen. Like, I didn't expect I would be where I am today. And I think the committees serve a vetting tool for you. And you yourself said that, committee work is committee work. That's when stuff should be vetted. It should be not vetted here. We will have 8-hour meetings if we vet everything here. So that's
Just remember that, because we still got your committee coming.
Yeah.
Other comments on that?
What was the motion?
Read the motion.
Motion for Operation and Audit Committee to review all financial items and make recommendations to the board with the highest focus of budget impact.
If I may add my 2 cents
Bob.
worth, as a member of the design committee, I recommend that we dissolve the design committee because it's finished.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Asmar, did you want to speak, or are you leaving? Ms. Carter.
My committee meetings, one of my members said they got to leave too, and we had action on the EBO, and I had a question for Mr. Asmar. He said he had to leave. Quickly, this is an amendment. This is not the original agreement with the city, right?
I don't know what you're referring to.
This amendment that we have for the city of Pensacola, was the 27th, this one right here?
No, that's the agreement.
That's it.
That is the agreement.
Okay, well, the reason why I'm saying is, and the reason why I'm asking you, because you helped me with it, we put a line in this, and I went to council about the equal business opportunity, and I just wanted to know what page is it on, and where is it included, because I couldn't find it in the verbiage.
Ed, it's not in there. It's not in there.
Repeat what you said was supposed to be in there.
She wanted to know what page it's on.
Article 7, excuse me, Mr. Reed, Article 7, the second sentence, the city will follow all SBE/MBE policies and procedures as adopted by the city council in the execution of this agreement.
And it didn't give it, and the reason why it didn't give a percentage is because that was something that the city was supposed to do, correct?
The city has in their policy that specific percentage, and the city council agreed to
Thank
it,
you.
instructed staff, that was their intent.
Thank you. All right, motion on the table, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, Mr. Gunther.
That staff immediately prepare a plan which will balance the operations and maintenance budget. This plan will review the variable ticket and variable attendance surcharges on all tickets sold pursuant to Section 5 of the use agreement, which provides that fees be reviewed no less than every 3 years in order to cover the maintenance and operations and expenses of the park.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Will you read that again, please?
There's no time limit on that, just ask the staff to review.
I know, but read it again.
That staff immediately prepare a plan which will balance the operation and maintenance budget. This plan will review the variable ticket and attendance
Okay, but
surcharges.
Why don't we try it, stop it right where
Okay,
you,
that's fine.
read it to the period, where the
Staff will
period
immediately
ought to be.
prepare a plan which will balance an operations and maintenance budget.
We'll immediately prepare a plan? What you said? Well, my first question, and then when you went into the tickets, that's why I said that too, because Mr. Baldwin's still here. I mean, if we're negative $2 million a year because we got to control contamination, we can't go to the ballpark and say, hey, we want $2 million a year because y'all got all these ticket sales.
But Mr. Chairman, this is just the spirit of what we've been talking about. Let's try to balance the budget. That's all.
I'm with you on that. I'm just saying you can't dump it on the baseball team.
Oh, no, I'm not going to dump. He stopped.
That
He
is
didn't.
one option, parking's an option, all of the other things you raised as options, that's a work in progress. All we're saying is, that ask the staff to start looking, and not just the chairman and talking, about it, but to look and explore it, every option. And without a specific timeline that, we're going to raise the ticket surcharges.
I couldn't agree more. And that's and as I've said like 5 times today, we don't know what that's going to look like yet.
And we took out the surcharges and all this other adverbs and adjectives and what have you. You just said, let's try to figure out a way to balance the budget. It's just a good spirited motion.
Aspiration. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what we've been trying to do, isn't it? But we can put that in a form of a motion if you want. To hear any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anything else?
Last one. Staff proceed with the preparation and approval of a shared maintenance agreement for those who will be leasing the private development parcels.
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that one.
The idea being that the appraisals are being done, that there is some interest, I've been told, in leasing. They ought to get a head start as opposed to at the last minute, looking at the things as they're being developed. What are the components of shared maintenance, shared common area, rather than have this board eat all of it, and it's going to be limited by market factors. I mean, this is all the people are going to pay for the rent or all they're going to pay for the lease. There's not, they won't pay an additional CAM fee, whatever, but to get a head start on it.
Basically on the 9 parcels that they're going to have.
Yeah, and
prorated.
starting.
That's the intent anyways, isn't it?
It is, but we don't have those fees identified or what the rates would be.
But, to put that on their plate along with everything else on their plate, because there is some interest.
I guess you do it by percentage. You can't do it by square footage percentage of that, but I mean, that's our intent all along to do that. But we don't know what fees are yet, so we don't know what that's going to be,
I
but
understand,
that's fine.
But it needs to, the work in progress needs to start. That was the sense of the committee and the.
I had a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for reporting for us. For Councilman Johnson. Did you have something, Mr. Baker?
I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Can we go over that issue of how the staff was paid? Because what I heard was 75% was paid from the construction budget and 25% was paid from the operating budget.
To move into operations, right? Currently, we're being paid out of the construction budget. And as we move into operations, we're going to drop the percentage to come out of that fund as opposed to the construction.
Well, all I want is this answer. Who is paying your salary? Community Maritime Park Board or the City of Pensacola?
The City of Pensacola pays writes my paycheck, yeah.
They pay us, and then the CMPA receives a bill,
Reimburses
and we
them.
reimburse the city.
Yeah.
So you've really been on our payroll the whole time?
75% of my salary, 100% of Nicole's, the whole time.
75% of your salary and 100% of hers, the city pays?
No, the CMPA pays.
Okay. So you're the only one we've got?
I'm 100% CMPA.
That's all.
At what point in the budget, you explained the other day, certain city departments are enterprise, and they've got to cover, like the city engineer. I said, well, are we going to get a bill from the risk management division? Are we going to get a bill from the city council for their time talking about Maritime Park Board? You said, no, it's only those
that are
enterprise, which is the engineer, and there was a line item for that.
Correct.
Is there a line item for your 75 and or 100% from day one?
No, sir. We've been in working capital. When you go back to your construction budget, you'll see the line working capital. That's where our salary's been the entire time. But moving forward, we are now employed. Nicole's leased. My position in the org chart is in neighborhood services underneath Mr. Flaherty, which is not an enterprise operation.
And so is your salary, your 75%, and is that salary or total salary cost benefits, the whole package?
The whole package.
Okay. Is that included in the 252 maximum?
No,
Since
that's
you're in
included
their
in this,
department.
in this budget. You see employee leasing up at the top, line 13. That's 75% of mine and 100% of Nicole.
Regardless of whose budget we have, whether it's the one in the black, the one in the red, or the red, almost purple. I just wanted to know, because, it's not Ed's favorite subject, but the subject did come up at the audit committee about shouldn't we go ahead and pay the staff? And it's just interesting to me that we really are paying the staff, kind of, you know, so.
Well, since you're raising the question, at some point, we got to decide what staff we're going to have and where we're going with that.
Well, I don't want it to be controversial. I'm just saying to you, if the buck stops with this board, then we probably ought to have some say in it. If we look at it like the city's got to pick up any deficit, then maybe we shouldn't have any say in it, you know?
Mr. Kobe, a long time ago, I think loaned you here at his dime for a while. Is that correct?
That is correct, but once the construction budget was put in place, we got on the clock.
We had a free ride with Mr. Spears for a while.
He had me for about 3.5 years.
I mean,
Got our money's worth.
that's significant savings. And, but I mean, we do have to figure that out, what's going on with that. And again, that's why I'm saying.
Who came up as far as, you know, and again, as trustees, we need to be aware of this, is the, you know, potential for conflict of interest. He's hired, you know, and subject to be, you know, I guess by the mayor, I'm not sure.
Correct.
You know, and so hypothetically, not putting personalities in it, hypothetically, you know, he's responsible to the mayor, and if he crosses the mayor in doing something that was good for the board, he's putting his job in jeopardy. And that's not a good place to put somebody, anybody, and particularly for this board. So, you know, I don't want to be controversial and create problems for Ed or for this board or for the city. We want to work together, but it's something that I think we need to be cognizant of, particularly if we're paying the, you know, the bill, and if there's a way that we can insulate him.
Now you're getting to be controversial.
Well, I don't know, but I'm saying it's the real world, and we can only stick our head in the sand for so long. So, you know, the chairman says that, you know, it's real money. We're going to need to do. We're going to decide about staff at some point.
Well, he's leaving it. I have to.
What do you want me to do?
Can you wait a minute till we deal with it? Because
Can we table this for 1 second?
All right, that's fine.
I have
the motion passed, so we're done.
Can you stay?
We don't have any more motions under that. We'll come back to the budget. Ms. Carter, do you have a motion you want to place?
Yeah, we have 2 action items. We had $1,800 that we started talking about in December. The Jim Reed said we would take the money out of $7,500 for the program manager. Then I get an email from Nicole a week ago saying, I don't have authority for the $1,800. I have in my notes that we did vote on it, and 2 meetings, the only thing I had to do was put in a budget and not necessarily go back to the board to vote. But Ed is saying something totally different, that we never voted on it, and I got $1,800 worth of bills, and I'm wondering why.
We're going to have to send it to the Audit and Operations Committee and get approval before we look at it. It's financial.
No, we did this.
This board did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the board did it, but now let me just tell you this.
The budget was dispersed.
The last
and
check
reviewed, but there
that
was
I
not-
signed for Diversity Program Advisors, Inc., it's my understanding that check number 2437 is the last check. Okay? What would be very interesting to your comment would be for us to go back and see from the beginning how much was spent on diversity. I'm not in your $1,800. I'm saying to you it'd be interesting, because I just hate for it someday for us to find out that we spent $234,000 and we were supposed to spend $250, or we spent $265 and nobody appreciates it. I mean, that's kind of.
And what I'm saying is, I know we made a decision on that, and I know that I would never have gone forward asking people to give money. And if we're talking about $1,800, that's 3 months. So, you know, my committee and I was discussing, and they all heard the same thing I did. It was approved, and I think it was Juanita, if I'm not mistaken. She said, I want to see a budget and what you're going to be spending on before I approve it. And I said I would send it, bring it. I gave it to Ed in March. In February, in March.
And in the end, we moved that you and George would get together and figure that out. Remember, and he just got his last check.
$3,000 short. I took $3,000. They took $3,000 out of my check to pay the first $3,000.
This didn't have anything to do with that $3,000. I came back after December and said I needed.
You got your first 3,000, and now you're looking for additional 1,800 that you're
and
going
I
to
asked for
spend.
that in December, and we've had conversations about where that was going to come from, 2, 3 different board meetings, so I'm surprised.
But you've got $1,800 worth of invoices for work that's been done, and.
Well, being done, yeah.
Okay, but the obligation has been incurred, you've gotten the invoices, and there's a hang-up in paying them, and I think that's what we need to clear up.
And that's the most simplest way to describe this is I cannot find in the video reviews of February or March or any meeting where a motion was made to approve $1,800 additional expense for the program. And that's all I need. The budget was presented and discussed. No motion was ever made.
Hold that thought. Did we not just say that Ed was we paid for him? If at any time during that process it needed to be a motion in December, January, and February, and March, and I talked about it every meeting, I would have thought that he would have said, we never made a motion, because that's why he is employed and I'm a volunteer. So I'm surprised to get an email from anybody about $1,800 when I just assumed, and I shouldn't assume, that it wasn't an issue, and if it wasn't issues, Ed would have brought it up and let us know. You can't do that. He does that on everything else. So why didn't you tell us that it wasn't voted on?
Ms. Scott?
Was the intent of this board, as I'm trying to recollect that meeting, was the intent to give Ms. Carter approval for the $800? Because if that was the intent, I would say let's just cut through all of the other discussion and do what we need to do to resolve this issue.
I move formally this board approve the $1,800 expenditure for the invoices that have been presented for the programming that she's done.
You got a motion and a second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the only
Did
one
you
other-
have something on that, Dottie? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Ms. Carter?
Okay, the only other thing is, we had a lengthy discussion about the issues that I brought in front of the board, Hora's issue with prompt pay, and I heard Hora today saying all of that, but everything I'm getting from the legalese that prompt pay, everybody has to follow it, from the prime to the first tier, second tier, third tier. So the board made a motion to have our attorney take a look at whether or not there's issues with prompt pay as it relates to payment of these subs, and oversee the finishing up of the payments and the retainage. That's an issue, and it still is an issue for all these people who are submitted to the committee. And so that is what I'm bringing today. We're asking for our attorney to take a look at that and let us know if, in fact, there was a violation of it, because the way I understand it is, it's 10 days after they get paid. So if the first prime gets paid on Thursday, he has 10 days, and then when they pay the next prime, it's 10 days. It's not all these things that I heard from Hora today as the reason why not. And that is where we got hung up. Who's right? Is it? So we asked that our council take a look at it and get back to the board and say, here's the problem, and here's how I present it. And I think that's why Dick Baker asked Hora to talk about payment, because it was a big issue.
Mr. Baker?
At the end of our meeting, I voted for what you just said, but after listening to that discussion today and more from Mike Horton and also from Ed before, I don't intend to vote for it at this point. We're so tight on money, and I think it's a wasted expenditure, because our attorney doesn't have the authority to get into those subcontracts either. That's why I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just going to be one
And
person
their
voting
lien
against
release
it.
is required, we would be on the hook, or they would be on the hook.
And I think the problem is, as I
Thank you,
told
Dr. Bolton.
Thank you for staying. The problem is, this is a whole nother can of worms that we're now resolving. But we promised, and one of the people said, we promised them quick pay from the very beginning, 6 years ago, and now we're saying it's okay?
We didn't agree to waive requirements of Florida statutes, for lien waivers. We can't, if you pay without a lien waiver, you're at risk of paying twice. and we, as trustees, we would be in violation of our obligation, and we'd be in trouble with our lenders. That's a condition of their contract and a condition that lenders have imposed on construction loans. You don't pay bills until you get lien releases or partial lien releases, and that's the reason for the holdback. And some of the issues is retainage. In every contract for construction I'm familiar with has a retainage.
Yeah, but the only problem that I'm seeing is he's going to say whatever he needs to say to make him look like he's totally right. I'm not in agreement, and neither was the members. And you see, Mr. Baker feels that it's resolved, but why believe him versus someone who's saying no? Everyone has to follow the same laws
Well,
when it comes to the payment.
he has to follow law by what we told him he has to do, and by his kind of. But once he pays his sub, like he said, if I'm his sub to lay brick and I hire you to come mix the concrete, I can do whatever I want to with you. You can sue me. You can do whatever. I'm your guy that you've contracted with. You haven't contracted with him. And that's what he was trying to say. Now, I thought, and George is trying to get up here and speak, I thought that's why we hired George, though, to kind of help with some of that stuff. Come on. I mean, not because it's legally, they're legally not bound by that. If the final guy hires a guy to every day wash his truck back at the thing and make sure it's full of gas and doesn't get paid, and he's the sub guy.
And before we get into George, let me just ask you this question. I signed a check for Jerry Pate and Company. Now, are they a sub or are they the contractor? Do they have a contract with us?
They do not have a contractor out there.
Who has a contract with us?
Magi Construction is the only contract we have.
Okay, then why are we paying that sub?
Because we bought materials directly from them, and we have to buy it directly to
In order to
ignore
avoid the sales
tax.
tax. Okay. That's close enough for government work.
I keep hearing about all these complaints that people are having. They never show up here. They never call me. They never call Lou Ray. One thing. The next thing is I keep telling the chairman of the EBO committee, it's very dangerous as a CMPA board member to start trying to resolve second, third, and fourth tier subs complaints. There is provisions in our design build contract between Magi and CMPA that expressly prohibits any member of this board dealing with any subcontractors and trying to resolve disputes. We're going to put ourselves in a very bad position if she continues down this road of trying to get in the middle of every time a subcontractor doesn't like the way something is happening. And without understanding the contractual obligations between the parties and in fact whether in fact those contractual obligations are being met. And they are. SOAR is not paying anybody until they get their lien waivers in. The subs do not, and the second tier subs are paid at the same time. If one lien waiver is not done from anybody in that prime subcontractor, none of those people are going to get paid because the resulting liability comes back to the board.
Okay.
And I keep saying that.
And I'm telling you what happened at the same board meeting. I'm telling you this clearly. I make sure that I direct people to you. And you know what they tell me? You bully them, you're on them, you call them, you are intimidating. And that is the reason why you get no one to come to you or Lou Ray. But the point of it is, I shouldn't have to hear it. It shouldn't even come to me. And not just to me, to a whole board of other people who are not saying anything because they don't want to confront you because you're big. Okay, your voice is big, but at the end of the day, we should not have the numbers that we have. You told us in the last EBO, now they're 10%. We promised these people 33 and a third, and that's construction. We had over $15 million, and that's unacceptable. And now I'm trying to figure out how to put it in a report, and you're not working with me, trying to think that I'm focusing on you. I just want the story to be told to the best and most positive situation. If it didn't get done, it just didn't get done. But people are complaining about what DPA did. And they are not happy, and they are afraid to tell you that because
Well-
they're figuring that you
well
are
then-
going to do something to make sure that
Well,
they don't get their
if
pay
that was
or
the
their
case,
retainage.
if that was the case, why are these people calling me every day and I'm working with them every day?
Because you know what they say, they're going to go to whoever is going to carry the water.
Okay.
Okay? So if they think you got the higher up on the thing, then they're going to go to you.
There's
If it's
contradictions.
resolved, no, just say this, you got the
Contradicting
information.
your own
Hey,
statements.
Audra, how many people are out there? You started this by saying you told Mr. Horton that there's people that are going bankrupt.
Going
Is
out
that
bankrupt, yes. Not one of them. Which contractor is
Well,
going bankrupt?
one person in particular said that they cannot pay their bills. Well, actually, two actually said that. Well, actually, three.
Really?
And they are afraid. And they asked me to keep it confidential because of what they fear will happen to them. And if the chair wants me to tell him directly, or the committee wants me to do, and you want to talk to them about how they feel about having to wait 45,
not going
60
to tell me
days,
directly? This is in the sunshine.
I'm just saying, this is sunshine. So I'm not just making this stuff up. I'm saying, let's resolve it.
The one
and let's move
contractor
on.
you're speaking about is Affordable Concrete. Donald Rice was sitting right here.
I'm telling you, whatever I told you in the report
Donald
that
and
I
I
sent you,
talk 5-10
just
times a day.
Just handle it. Handle it so that we don't have to hear it.
All right,
Thank
Dottie,
you.
you have something on this?
Yes, I do. I've attended many EBO meetings.
Why don't you speak into the microphone? George will let you use it. He's pretty big.
I've tried as a citizen. As a citizen, I've tried to attend as many of these meetings as possible because I know you folks as business people can't give 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, even 7 days a week as some people do. Trying to see the continuity between complaints set voice in one meeting and how they're resolved in another meeting, and also how things are discussed at other meetings that are not official meetings of this group, but other community meetings. And I have had the privilege and the uncomfortableness of being sometimes the only witness to individuals having conversations about how the system that we as a community has set into place was not working and how it was being negatively impacted on their business. I attended the disparity study meetings, which the city has contracted a group to do, and there were individuals who showed up there, and several of them indicated that they were going to try to air what they couldn't air to the CMPA at the disparity study, and then when they realized that it was a public forum that was being recorded, they left. I had contact with an individual who I believe is a bonding agent that I believe Ms. Johnson referenced earlier, who pulled me aside to say that he had worked with several contractors who he would call it criminal, the way they, and I said, then you need to tell them to go talk to the board. And he said, they will never do it because they believe they will be blackballed. So I believe that Ms. Carter, even though she and I very often disagree, and we do so with much passion, I would verify that what she is saying that Mr. Hawthorne is disclaiming is in fact an issue that this board needs to realize. There are some people who work very comfortably with the system that has been set up. There are some people who believe that their business is very much benefited. But there are some individuals who have completely eliminated themselves from being a participant at any point in the future because they don't want to have to deal with the system as they see it, and the doublespeak which occurs. We dangle a carrot, and then we change the carrot to an apple, and then we say, oh no, it was oats, and if you're not happy with oats, you shouldn't have hopped in to begin with. And that is the dance that keeps happening in contracts, in RFQs that get switched out at the last minute, and then in contract form don't even represent what the original RFP was about. What you were discussing earlier, all of it reflects the methodology that you're using in dealing with people. Mr. Hawthorne has a lot of experience in doing what he does. But what the EBO program was about was way beyond just being a contractor. It was about developing undercapacitated community. That takes skills. That means coddling on some levels. It means getting creatively out of the box at other levels. And it means going to the wall to help the undercapacitated to reach capacity. And what we ended up doing was creating a big sieve, and everybody jumped in. And those who held on tight enough got it at the end. And those who got tired of being bounced around just are gone. We didn't figure out how to filter them into a usable format or how to direct them to what they want. There are vendors who have attended meeting after meeting after meeting, and yet the very opportunity that they had to work with the park has already been contracted out to someone else because their names would not move forward in a timely enough manner, or they weren't told about it in the appropriate manner. And when people feel intimidated, and George, you can take offense, you keep saying how I'm harassing you. I am not. Some people do not like to be told that they are ignorant. Some people do not like to be told that they don't know what they're doing when they believe that they know just as much as you do. And so to publicly humiliate contractors, to publicly put their name out there and in some way put a negative spin on what they're doing when they have gone way over the edge trying to work with the system does become for them a form of harassment. Just as when I bring information forward and I'm accused of being this personal vendetta person, it becomes a very intimidating thing. I just happen to be a staunch enough individual that I'm going to stand up to the face of someone who puts me out, and I have nothing to lose. But if you're a contractor trying to get business with the city, and you're suddenly made into the problem contractor, and everyone in the community is talking about how you can't quite fit in, it does become a very negative experience. And I can tell you there are at least 5 contractors that I know of, and then the bonding agent told me about another 3. I said, I don't even want to know their names. Those are totally different stories. So that's 8 different people who feel like this process failed them miserably. When people are told, pull your bid off because you're not going to get it anyway, and we'll make sure you get some work, that's called bid fixing. That's called interfering in the bid process. And yet that is what occurred, gentlemen and ladies. And that's what we're not talking about. And that's why when you see passion coming out in some of us, it's because all along people kept saying, we're going to deal with it, we're going to deal with it, we're going to deal with it. It hasn't been dealt with. And we're at the nth hour now. We don't have statistics, we don't have reports, we don't have lists of participants, and we don't have an accurate way of assessing how this program worked. Because one week it went this way, and the next week it went another way, and sometimes we said we had 45%, and sometimes we said we had 10%. No one knows because it was all guesstimation. So we don't have a black and white picture that can be given, and we're trying to give a black and white picture. And I think we have to clearly say, here's where we failed in our process, and here's where we succeeded. We got some people employed. We got some contractors raised to another level. We taught some of them how to get bonding, how to follow the process. But we didn't do as much as we all had hoped, and maybe we were just Pollyannas. Maybe we were led down, the yellow brick road and it turned into something else. But as a committee, as a board, I would beg of you to set up a process from this point forward where it's not one individual who carries or drops the ball, and it's not one little person in the community who's held out to slaughter to justify everything else. Get a system that is transparent and also accountable at every level, because it's not been done.
Thank you, Dottie.
Thank you. And you're referring to who the EBO committee hired?
I would not have firsthand knowledge because I was not in there, but it was referenced that in reviewing contract proposals, individuals were suggested that they not submit their bid and that they would be cut in as a sub later on.
This was at a committee meeting that this was happening.
I do not know at what level it was happening. I just know that one individual said, when I was told that, I went away and I stayed away. And another individual said to me, you have no idea how people are just quaking in their boots because they need to go after the money, but they know they'll never get another city job if they do.
It was during the matchmaking.
Whether it is real or imagined, the perception is there.
When DPA had the matchmaking, that they were promised certain things, and none of it developed. And some people got in, and some people didn't. It depended on how they played the game. If they played the game with the people in charge, then they got the job. If they didn't, they got booted out.
Let's play the game.
Play the game.
Can I, this is just the lack of credible truth that just came out this woman's mouth is beyond me. She just said that, don't get up and start it. Don't interrupt me.
George has the floor, Mr. Hawthorne.
She just said the matchmaking sessions that DPA held in putting together people, DPA never held not one matchmaking session. Scott Davison held 2 of them. George Hawthorne did not have one.
Were you a part of that?
Yes, I was as part of that. So I did not.
You were a common thread throughout all this
Audra, can I?
You were.
Is it possible that I could have she's made her statements, let me clarify them. okay?
You have the floor, Mr. Hawthorne.
All right. She's basically said that I said the matchmaking sessions when a contractor and a subcontractor get together. There is no conversation between DPA and any subcontractors with that. That's a misstatement. Next statement, people are going broke. Tell me which one of these contractors is out of business. As a matter of fact, all the ones, the 13, are all thriving. One of them has a payment problem because he spent too much on labor that probably has some fallout that has to be dealt with, okay? Third issues. You consistently talk about all these people that are complaining, but they sit in here in this room and they never say anything.
They don't.
But they call me daily, nightly, and I've got tons and tons of emails, correspondence. So I would gladly because one thing about me, I document everything. So I will gladly be able to show the email trails of what I do. So I'm tired of being disparaged as not delivering, and then I hear something that the numbers are not correct, which 45, the numbers are given on a monthly basis. And those numbers are directly related to pay apps that come from HOR that are immediately put into a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet that outlines exactly what is there. The names, the dollar amounts, everything. And I change those as they change. Okay, so all this continuous talk that the numbers aren't accurate. You got everything that I have in every way, every month, and I keep hearing they're not accurate, they're wrong. You know, but no one can ever sit there and say where they're wrong, how they're wrong, where that. So I'm tired of being disparaged by this woman and this whole thing. You know, $3,000 was taken out of my budget without my approval. I never agreed to that. This board never agreed to come out of my thing, and I gladly have done that, all right? I'm still working trying to help this board with $0, you know, and it's just getting very difficult for me to continue to hear this haranguing by someone who has no basis in facts. And that's where I'm at.
Ms. Scott.
This has been a challenge trying to figure out where we are in this process. I think this project has provided an opportunity for some serious lessons learned, but I guess my question right now is, where are we right now in terms of what is it that I don't want us to sit here and discuss and rehash things that's happened months ago and years ago, and he said this and she said this, and I mean, I think that all of us ought to check our emotions right now so that we can move forward in a concise, concerted way. But I'm kind of lost as to what are we trying to accomplish right now at this second?
What I need now is the final reports. If DPA's contract ended on the 31st, then I need a date certain of the final reports, because that's going to be what I'll use to do the June 6th final report that we actually print. I need that. And I need
George, is that something that you can
Final
provide?
report cannot be done until after the June 30th or the May 31st payout, which is the end of construction. I've been saying that since day one.
Okay, is the May 31st, are you saying that the final report, the numbers can be provided
I won't
by May
get
31st?
the May 31st pay-apps. I usually get those pay-apps and those information after they're submitted to the city, somewhere between the 10th and the 15th of the month. So then it takes me, and on the final report, it's going to probably take me about a week to prepare that. So we're talking somewhere in 15th through the 21st of June.
Okay,
that's the earliest that I can give any kind of final report.
So can we say June 25th?
Okay,
I mean, that gives him more than that.
So George, we can get the final report or the numbers by June 15th?
Yes.
Okay, so Audra, would June 15th suffice for you?
It would always.
Okay.
As long as he meets
so,
it.
Ed, can we reflect that in the minutes that George will have the numbers by June 15th, if it's okay?
You said 25th?
He said the 25th, but I asked him about the 15th. Which one?
June. Of June?
June, right.
Yes, 25th is 20. I say by the 21st I should be able to have. So 25th
Give the
is
25th.
fine.
I think it's fair.
Okay, the
Mr.
25th.
Chairman, your board meeting in June is on the 20th. In order to
I can get a final report 5 days after I have the final
All I want is
information.
a date. Is
Yes.
June, and Ed, you were stipulating.
Our meeting's on the 20th.
Okay, so can we get the final report by the 15th?
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay
15th,
with you?
15th,
Okay,
I
can we
can't-
put that in the minutes? Okay.
I
That's-
cannot guarantee the 15th. The final report is based upon me receiving final affidavits from HOR. I usually receive those between the 10th and the 15th after the preceding month.
Our next board meeting, June 20th, can you have by then?
I hope so. If
I
I
mean,
get
not our next
yes.
board
So we
too
get it
much.
the day before?
Okay.
Yes.
That was going to be my request, that report.
No
that
problem.
report be made
Yeah.
directly to this board
On June the 19th?
on June the 20th.
On June the 20th?
20th.
Is
No
that okay
problem.
with-
That's fine.
Fine with
Okay.
me.
Can we reflect that in the minutes?
All right, what else,
And
Audrey?
that was the one, what was the second
And
one?
the second thing is, and I'm real careful not to step over my line with people. I do direct them to George, but if they tell me they don't want, and it was a lot of time that I didn't say anything, so I have the report that I have given to the committee, my committee, that I want to enter into official board minutes about what has been going on, because I don't want people to think that we allowed stuff to go on and then the board didn't do anything about it, or just act like it didn't happen, and I want to submit that. So I'm asking, can I submit that report? There were some typo errors in it. I would do it electronically. I told Ed I would give it to Ed regarding the issues that came up, even if we do nothing about them. But I feel like I have a responsibility to those people who found confidence in me to deal with them, to say something to this board about it. And I want the opportunity to submit that report.
Okay, so that's like a lessons learned type thing from your committee. That might be something good from all the committees. So, I mean, I think that's okay to submit that. I mean,
Well,
Mr. Baker.
I think maybe, I'm not sure what this is, but we may want to go through it, because I think it's a list of things that someone alleged that HOR did not do right, and a list of things that someone alleged DP advisors didn't do right. I don't think our committee's gone through any of that. I mean,
I would also like to see
yeah,
what they
but
are.
I think what Ms. Carter is saying is that she's just submitting some information. It's not saying that,
There are two things that's happening. I am going to do the lessons learned, which is going to be the final of this report, which we'll have to prove before it's printed. And I did send the same report, and not any different than the one you responded back to me in my email.
You've never sent me any
that's it.
report?
okay, wait, let's, I'm sorry. Mr.
I mean,
Chair.
I have the response email. I sent
Okay.
him the report, I think the 4th of April. And he had the opportunity, and HOR had the opportunity to get back with me before the EBO meeting. They didn't.
You never sent us the report.
Okay,
There was
what
no
I don't want to,
attachment.
what I really don't want to, because I have
Okay.
to go.
I understand.
Okay,
Let's keep going. So we've got
just wanna
those.
get-
What else do you want?
Right.
And right now, if I get that so I can finish this up, I'm happy, because that's all I've ever wanted. I need the numbers, but Dana said he would get those numbers for me for the job. So those are the three things we were missing to finish this document, and then I'm done.
Is it, okay. So that's all, Mr. Chair.
All right. So we're going to get that report from him on the 20th. You're going to supply that. I guess that needs to go, your affidavits or whatever you're going to submit, or things that this program did wrong. Is that what you're?
Well, I want to keep it positive. I think it's very important
Said lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
to
Okay.
put it in, to couch it in the lessons learned, so that nobody, I mean, really, nobody was perfect in this. And don't shoot the messenger.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm gonna couch it as, and if you guys, you should look at it. I'm gonna couch it honestly, authentically, and without Audra in it, so that we can say, well, we didn't do great, but here's the things we learned, and here's the things we are going to do moving forward to help this process. Because that's all we really want. We want to end this on a high note, rather than act like nothing's happening, which people out there are saying things are going on with this program. I think it would be wrong for us to ignore it. That's what I'm saying. And
All right.
my way of not ignoring it is to just put it as positive as I can.
Okay. Mr. Murdy.
Talking about lessons learned next time, and that leads us to whether or not you feel the need, or any of the members of the board feel the need, we're going to be dealing with vendors, or maybe we're not. Maybe just the city's going to deal with vendors. Do you feel the EBO committee's job is done? will be done, after this report, or is there a continuing need? Mr. Johnson considered sunsetting.
Well, let me tell you what Kim said to me, because I submit under her because they have the contract. And I said to her, we're going to work in tandem. What really works is that when people have issues that come to me, I give them directly to her, and she handles them like that. She calls them up, she says, okay, fine, and they're resolved. Like, we have an issue right now, we got 50 people who are interested in the vending. And she wants to get approval from this board first, and the EBO, is that okay with you? And it sounds like it's fine, so now she's going to meet with all of them. So I think the EBO will always play a role for issues and concerns, but I do believe there has to be a streamlining and to make sure there's a...
I mean, are you're suggesting, or are you not, that, you just do it as your individual, as a board member and taking it upon yourself to meet with Kim, or do you feel like, need a committee? I'm just looking for guidance. We made a commitment, we changed master developers, we got sold a bill of goods, we've tried to do the best we can. Certainly everybody can do better. But adult education is very expensive. We've learned a lesson, but are we going to implement any of the things we learned, or are we done?
I think our chair put it best. He does not want a lot of the stuff vetted in a board meeting that ends up being 5 hours long. So it's resolutions and issues have to be resolved somewhere. And I think the EBO...
I can't wait a month.
And it can't wait a month. So I think it has to be some kind of committee where the community's head and stuff is vetted and what we're doing now. So you're going to need somebody to oversee that, I believe. And I don't think you could ever not do that as long as the project is there. That's my thoughts.
Mr. Reeves.
I don't know that we can resolve this today. I just want to say to you that I think you've done a really, really, really good job as chairman, and I think it's taken a lot more time than you ever dreamed of. And I just would suggest 2 things, just as a board member to you as chairman, because you're right on the front lines of this, is I think it's important that we ascertain what the staff or the finance department or whatever, from day one, what we've spent on the covenant, because I don't want that to come bite us back. And when I say day one, I'm talking about back when we had a developer and those numbers were getting thrown around and what have you. I think that's important. And I'm just saying that to you as our leader, okay? And the second thing is, let's just hypothetically say, in case we ever have to face this, that suppose the School of Business called up Ed Spears and said, Ed, we'd like you to come over here and be the dean of the School of Business. Who would hire replacement staff? And I say that theoretically and hypothetically to you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not expecting an answer. I'm just saying, and again, you've done a great job, and I hope we can resolve this in the spirit of unity, harmony, and cooperation.
Resolve which part?
Right, this part.
Yeah,
well,
and I think we have, because the chair have been coaching me. He lets me know, no uncertain terms. I want resolution, I want it to be kind, and I want you to be a professional about it. And so I'm trying. But I will not be challenged on things that I have no dog in the fight. I'm not a contractor. I'm just a volunteer. And I've done my very best. And I feel like I get beat up.
This has been, as we said, this was nobody's job. For all volunteers, we've come a long way.
What about the, respond to Mr. Reeves' suggestion about the dollars spent on, EBO, and I think there needs to be a very clear delineation that a large part of Mr. Davidson's presentation in RFP was that the developer committed to spending $250,000 on that, and obviously that is one of many promises that didn't get fulfilled. And I think that's a distinction. I think the money, I would hate to say, well, it was a $50 million project and we spent $3.98 on EBO as a board. Whatever the number is, I suspect it's not a very big number. particularly in relationship to the amount, of the contract. But, I think that's a distinction that needs to be reflected in your report, and, and any sort of response that's given if the question is asked.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think his number was 250 or 270.
It was, no, it's 250, but it was promised by the developer.
That was my point.
Right.
It was promised by the developer, but we kind of, in the spirit of our whole board, kind of said when we were going to fire the developer that we were going to take up the torch, so to speak. I'm talking about this board. And this is a number I've talked about from almost the first meeting I've been on about this $250,000. And I just think it's important for us to know that. I mean, if it's 236, then we essentially got there. If it's 150, which it isn't 150, I know that, but.
Do you know the number, Nicole, top of your head?
No, off the top of my head, but I think it's well over 250.
Yeah, and some of it's misleading. And Mr. Reeves, I remember either you were in there or it's when I was chairing the audit committee trying to ping Mr. Davidson on his money spending, to which a lot of it was for him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I spent 50,000 the last 2 months. Really show us where you spent it. Well, that was to pay me because I've been doing all this work on it. It turned out to be the start of his downfall with answers like that because we said you need to put so much in it, and he's, anyway, nothing we do about it. He said that, I said I was going to spend that. I've worked for 3 months working on this covenant, and that's why I'm charging y'all $100,000.
What I don't want to do is get to the end and have somebody figuring the number and somebody else saying, well, I don't want to count any of that Davidson.
Nicole, can you send a number out to everybody? All right. What else?
Right now, it's fine.
Mr. Spears.
I don't have the answer to your question. I think I do, but instead of me speculating, we have an employee leasing agreement between the city and CMPA that details that selection process. We'll send it to the entire board.
So could you send me a copy?
Absolutely.
Please.
On the way.
I'm going to find out, I want to thank you guys for hanging in there with me. I know that it's been tough for you to listen to my chatter, but I brought a recommendation from the committee, and the issue of prompt pay is an issue I know that we've been dealing since the very beginning, and promises that we made during the covenant. We cannot ignore that and not put that in the
Put it in your report. I mean, at this point, there's most of the water's under the bridge, and
but Chairman,
for
I would
next time, as Ms. Scott has said, lessons learned.
I would like to know specifically when these 13 people are going to be resolved with their payment issue. I don't care where it is, as long as it's a date certain and not just whenever, because.
And I've heard the person that we're paying saying there's no problem with those 13 people.
So
Is that right, George?
Yeah.
Can we get
13
something
people
in
are going
writing?
The 13 people are going through the end of the project closeout for the retainage. Most of their work that's been completed, most of it's been billed as of this last May 31st or March 31st date. There's probably 4 guys that have outstanding retainage, and as soon as it's the closeout has been done, punch list has been done, they'll get the retainage.
So give me a date on that. Is it the June 5th date or
That's
the
on
25th?
I don't control that. I have nothing to do with when HOR pays their bills. And you keep trying to say that I'm the one, I don't run that.
I didn't say you. I just asked for a date certain or an approximate.
The subs have to do the punch list too, and if they don't do the punch list or don't do it accurately, then
That's
they're
right.
not entitled to the retainage.
And that's HOR. I don't
That's
have
the
anything to
big
do with that.
Purpose of a retainage is that until you finish your work and finish it properly, and I think that may be part of the deal that Mr. Spencer mentioned about the pool liner. I mean, the pond liner, that's a warranty.
That's one.
Builder's warranty. If you got a problem with it, you fix it. You don't get paid the final payment until the punch list.
And all I'm asking is some oversight to make sure that happens. If there's a problem, I'd like to, he said there's only 4 people left, right? So it seems like to me a really easy thing to do. And I'd like to say that they've all been paid by the time we do this report. because I think that would be a great thing.
I don't have any problem with that, and if there's a problem in them,
I can guarantee.
think report to the committee if there's horses
Miss-
that they haven't done the punch list.
Yeah, I think so. I
then
mean,
you could give a response.
I would like, if you can, find out who had been paid, not who had been paid, who thinks they're being delayed unnecessarily other than the process. If you'll send it to Mr. Spears will get, make sure you tell him you're going to check on this, make sure they've
Yes, sir.
gone 1 through 5, and we'll check 1 through 5. They've done 1 through 5, they're sitting there for 60 days without pay, then
exactly. Yeah.
we'll do that. Like we said, we can't get in certain layers, but we'll look at that. All right,
I really
Ms. Scott, did you have?
appreciate
Thank you, ma'am. Do you
I
have?
think I was pretty much done, but I think as I'm listening, as part of this whole lessons learned thing, if George at some point, I don't have a specific date in terms of lessons learned, because I heard Mr. Brown talk about his experience was good. His problem was the intervals in terms of the payments, and we know that that was a problem. I don't think that instituting or trying to force a prompt pay is going to solve the problem of actual practice of what actually happens. So within that lessons learned, could you maybe look at the critical path in terms of how long, do that flow chart about how long it takes payment, and just see where along those lines we could have maybe done better.
Absolutely. I was going to do some
that
evaluations of
That's
those.
a lessons learned thing. That's not a
Yeah.
rehashing thing. I
No,
don't want to
that-
rehash. I want to see what we can do moving forward. What resource can we provide the city and other cities and communities that look to us and say, well, how was that experience for you? Here's just what went wrong. We swam, we got to the other side of the pool. It wasn't pretty, but we got there, and here are the lessons that were learned.
Definitely. It's one of the major parts of that closeout is going to be the recommendations for future, because we'll be doing that other places. So yes, that will be a big part of the report.
All right, Mr. Reeves.
I just wonder if you, as the chairman, could check with the bronze company that's making the plaque and see if, on an individual basis, what it would cost to buy a miniature, even if you were paying for it with your own funds.
Like, are you being sincere? Are you
glass to read.
are you being serious?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also trying to change the subject.
Ms. Carter, we're still on your committee. You have anything else on EBA? All right, we also had an opening committee. I think we've already covered that. Anything else come for the board? Bob, it's been a long meeting.
Let me say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've met a lot of good folks around the city. I've lived here in the 70s for 4 years, and I know I've gotten duly harassed about living in Navarre, but it's been a privilege. I've met a lot of good folks, and thank you very much. If I don't get a chance to talk to you all, thanks for the time. And
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate you attending. And that's a good way to end, is that don't freak, we've got a lot of little issues here we talk about, but look out the window across the street, and we're almost at the time for the first pitch to be coming out at 7. But, it's been exciting what we've done, and I appreciate everybody's support. We're adjourned.
Right.